is 7 p.m. So the appointed hour has arrived. It's our select board meeting of November 18th at 7 o'clock. We're going to get kind of a full agenda tonight. It starts off with two different types of, well, first we have a tax classification hearing that we're going to start with at 7, and then we're going to have a hearing on the, to solicit information and ideas on a community development block grant. So that'll be immediately following, trying to get these tax rates started. So we're going to start right off with the tax classification hearing. The assessors want to explain to us what our options are and what we're doing and where do we seem to be going with this.
Okay. Your options are to have a single rate or split rate. Single rate meaning everybody gets charged the same rate, or split is split out commercial. And we've always been single. If we split out commercial, it's a higher burden for the property owners. So as of right now, the guesstimate for the tax rate is going to be 1616, up from 1509 this current year.
I'm sorry,
1509 is the current, 1616. And the year before that it was 1469, just to give you that. So it's taking a much bigger jump this year.
So we have,
so this sheet that I handed out to you has the assessments divvied out by the different types of property for the next year and this current year. So the property values on residential went down about 5 million. And then the chapter land all went up.
chapter land went up. That's because the state value for chapter land changed?
No, mainly we had more acres.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Mainly a few more parcels and a few more acres.
Okay.
Yeah, people are learning that they can take their land out of the regular taxation and put it into chapter, which is cheaper. So they're doing it. Every year we see more and more. So that assists in bringing down the residential property value. So we need to raise more money to pay for everything, so our rate goes up.
Yeah, I noticed that last year, real and personal property, the total value, 220 million and 220.4 million, and now we're down to 215.6.
Yeah.
But like you say, the money has to be raised.
And you do understand that we, the assessors, do not set the rate. I mean, we set it through our process, but it's not because...
You're not as evil as some would like to think you are?
People come in and complain all the time. I say, go to town meeting and say, no, 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 no. Stop spending.
Just simple division.
That's right.
It's not our choice.
The form and the formula the state gives you, I'm sure, isn't as simple as what it could be, but to come out with the same end. But yes, it is town meeting that decides how much money. It's just, you folks are just trying to spread it out as evenly as you can.
Right, and then that's your job to decide whether to spread it out evenly or divvy it up, breaking out the commercial.
Any questions for the assessors?
Wow, I was just looking back and forth to see the pieces she was talking about.
Yeah, the $5 million $5 million loss of value is all under the residential column from one year to the next, which,
Tom, there's also the, not only the commercial, but the residential and then the non-residential. So we've always done a single rate just to split it evenly across the board. It's, you'll see a split tax rate like in bigger cities. You know, Greenfield has them. I think probably Northampton has them, Springfield.
so,
The main reason that a small town doesn't make sense is because you can shift the maximum and you're not going to get much relief to the personal property owner, but you'll kill the commercial owner in trying to do that.
so here's a question for you. Did we, in budgeting last winter, I mean, here we are, almost a year, certainly 10 months behind when we start the budget process. When we budgeted for a certain amount of new growth as far as the tax levy, and since our valuation went down, that new growth doesn't exist.
No, you still have new growth. It's just the value of the property is going down. But you've still got some new growth in there. So had there not been any new growth at all, the value would be even lower. But you're still able to capture what's truly new growth.
Because that's one of the, no, you've seen our budget sheets where we go through and we try to figure 20,000 or 30,000.
And that's
it's in there, it's just damn hard to find right now.
yeah, you won't see it in those numbers. It's part of what makes up those numbers. Because part of that was growth and then part of it was loss. So.
Any questions?
I'm just looking at the overall difference in the parcels, as it says, is basically none. So there's been a change in property and addition somewhere. But when you look across the numbers of the different classes and compare, there really isn't that much difference.
No, we didn't have a lot of change in parcelage.
No.
We picked up one house.
Yeah, but the change is in the value of about 5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know specifically, but my guess is some of a good portion of the 101 that disappeared is the larger parcels associated with the house that went into Chapel Inn. So it went from 101 to Chapel Inn.
How many properties did they look at this year? When they, like a third of them when they're doing cycling to reevaluations?
We looked at, I think there was 400 something. And every property has to be assessed at least once every 9 years.
Every
9 years.
9?
And we had fallen behind a
Me
little
too, I
bit.
thought it was 3 years.
So we looked at more this year.
And we're going to be looking at more this coming year.
When's our next revalue? Your next
I
revaluation?
think next year. Personal property. Personal property next year. That's a big one.
Ron, you have any questions? My last question is, when you calculate this out, have you gone to the point to figure out how close we came to the levy limit? Did we come, does anybody?
I know we've got that worksheet somewhere.
Oh, I have it. There's another thing here, but,
See how clear our crystal ball was last.
yeah.
There's a little worksheet.
By class, you don't have that worksheet.
I had it in my mind that we were within about $12,000.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to figure out where we came out. But you don't have that with you, so.
I think it's
Trip upon it and you want to email it to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's part of the website.
Okay. No other questions? I mean, I certainly would think one tax rate, there's no advantage to put more weight on commercial folks that have commercial type property and that sort of thing.
The non-resident option that we talked about is used quite a lot out on the Cape. And towns where there's significant non-resident ownership, but the Cape is the biggest place it's used.
So you're looking for a motion?
Oh, all right.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we apply the single rate classification as we have in the past.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. That should take care of it.
Thank you.
I understand you're ready to do your business, and then
Yeah, we have it.
later we can sign off on it. We have to sign off on the website for it? Yes? No?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
LA 5 on Gateway.
That'll be a thrill, I'm sure. All right. That's one crossed off the list. Okay, community development block grant hearing. It's been so nicely typed out for me, I feel I should read it. The purpose of this meeting will be to discuss and solicit public input to the town of Ashfield's fiscal year 2014 Massachusetts Community Development Block Grant application. Local citizens are requested to attend and propose activities which the town should apply for in this application. For additional information, you could have gone to the Ashfield Town website, ashfield.org. So, MJ,
Yes.
why don't you take the floor and kind of describe where we're at so far and what we can help you with, if anything.
Sounds good. Actually, it's what I hope we can help you with. My name is MJ Adams. I'm the Director of Community Development at Franklin County Housing Redevelopment Authority. As part of our role in that organization, one of the things that we've done historically for the last 30 years is work with the smaller communities to help them access community development block grant funds. Community development block grant funds are federal funds that are distributed to smaller communities. In our situation in Massachusetts, many of the towns are entitlement communities. They get a direct allocation from HUD, but most of the communities in Massachusetts have to apply in a competitive process to access these funds, and those are the small city communities. Ashfield will be in that bunch. The things that you can do with the community development block grant funds are multifold, but they have to meet two national objectives. The first objective is that whatever activity you take, it has to predominantly benefit low and moderate income families, households, individuals who live in your community. The other thing that you can use community development block grants for, the national objective, would be to eliminate slum and blight. Clearly, that's not something that's used very frequently in the more rural parts of the state, but it is one of those two major objectives you have to meet when you use the funds to fund an activity. I'm going to mention briefly the third thing that you can use community development block grant for. It's very relevant to Ashfield at the moment because you actually have an application in that's been tentatively approved subject to the receipt of an application. You can use block grants for urgent community needs. And the disasters that happened up in the Hilltowns in 2011 actually triggered Ashfield's ability to apply for and seek some funding for Smith Road for reconstruction. And I've been working with Ron Kohler and Tom, the highway guy.
No, please.
To access those. And so we will be working with the town. We just received notice today, by the way, that the application will be due at the end of January. So I'll be looking to work with Tom and Ron on advancing that piece. But the other piece that we're talking about specifically tonight is the other application that is due in February 2014. And those are the type of activities that you would typically fund in the more rural areas of the states include the list of the passed out. Did everyone get one of the handouts? And those include housing rehabilitation, where we can provide low interest or no interest loans or grants to homeowners to help fix up their houses so that they can be brought up to code. You can do economic development activities, signs and facades of stores in the downtown area. You You can fund some public facilities, senior centers, some infrastructure, water, sewer, drainage. Those clearly, those for the most part need to directly benefit lower moderate income families and neighborhoods. Infrastructure, public facilities and infrastructure, in my mind, more or less the same. It's the, publicly funded activities, drainage, stormwater, water, sewer, improvements that would benefit lower moderate income households or would eliminate slum and blights. And you can also undertake planning activities, so small scale planning activities, be it a study to take a look at architectural, historic preservation or architectural barrier removal in some of the public buildings, or other little planning needs that you might have. The process is tonight, the goal is to open up and to hear input from the community to see what needs you have, what might be funded under community development block grant program. The next step after this evening, after we gather this information, is to take a look at the community development strategy. It's a planning document the state asks communities to do, where the town sort of lays out what its big issues are, and what its priorities are, and what it hopes to do on those issues. Once we update the community development strategy, that goes before the Board of Selectmen again, they have to approve it. That it then goes into the state office, the Department of Housing and Community Development, a month in advance of the application, so we have to be getting that into DHCD in early January. And then you hold once the activities that the town decides to participate in are decided, we put together the grant application and we do a final public hearing to share with the community how that will work. And then we submit the application to the state. The applications go in February. We usually hear around the middle to the end of July, and then activities start up in the fall if we're successful. Our job at the Housing Redevelopment Authority is to put together a competitive grant application. We are working with Ashfield in conversation about a regional application where we would partner with the towns of Heath, Hawley, and Charlemont. Come together and make some decisions about what the needs were. There's some regional needs, housing rehabilitation, planning, social service activity, and then submit the application. So we're here tonight really to open up the floor to hear from the community what you perceive as your highest and most urgent and pressing needs. There is a sign-in sheet going around, and as part of the application, I do need to document that this meeting happened and that people were here. So I would ask that everybody please sign in. And that's sort of my introduction. I don't know how you want to receive input. Sometimes some select boards like to be the receivers of the input, and I'm here as a resource.
I just open it up. I mean, we can, it was my understanding, and I think you just alluded to it, the mechanism for this, since it's more than one community, is that we all have to have in the neighborhood of the like needs, or...
We have, as a regional application, we need to put in programs that can serve all 4 communities. So, for example, right now we are running a 4-town community development block grant with Bernston as the lead. There's 3 other communities that are involved. There's housing rehab that's serving all 4 communities, and we're also funding a social service activity that happens in all 4 of those communities. Happens to be Meals on Wheels through the Franklin County Home Care Corporation. But one of the things we're hoping here is, we're not coming to the assumption that Meals on Wheels or any particular social service is your particular need. We do, in order to be competitive, need to put together something that will earn a lot of points. And the reality is that you need to have regional activities, 2 activities that serve the entire region. So, does that answer your question?
It's a damn good start. Nina?
Yeah, Nina Kohler from Bailey Road. Mike Epstein and I are here as board members of the Ashfield Community Hall. We don't know if we fit into something like this because we are not a public building. It's a privately owned hall that the public uses for things. And what we were wondering is if we could fit into this grant with a feasibility study for handicapped accessibility. So the money's to hire an architect to do that study and make a plan.
And what's the
If
name
that-
of the building?
It's the Ashfield Community Hall. And it's called Community Hall because people from many towns use it. This is just an example of the calendar. It's filled every day with classes, and a lot of the classes wouldn't be utilized by handicapped people because they're movement classes or whatever, but we have drum lessons, we have concerts that I have permission to speak on Ruth Kraft's behalf. She's an elderly woman in town, and the last band concert that we had there, we also sponsor the town's band, the community band. Last band concert and ice cream social we had there, she sat outside and listened from outside because she can't get up the stairs. And there was a music recital that got rescheduled to the Congregational Church because people couldn't get there to listen to it. So we have a lot of public concerts. It's rented out for parties, private parties. So it limits what the public can do there if they can't. It's 2 levels. You go up to get into the hall and you go down to get to the bathrooms and the kitchen. So it is, it's something that we really want to see in this town, making it more accessible.
So it sounds like it's a fairly actively used community building.
It's getting to be more and more. It's paying for itself, and we have a lot of fundraising activities there to help pay for it.
And you're looking to do handicap accessibility for access and for the bathrooms?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that owned by a 501c3?
yeah. It used to be the Grange Hall. Yeah, and it has a commercial kitchen too.
And is the commercial kitchen rented out?
It can be, yep,
Nina,
yep.
would there be any provision that these other towns, if they didn't have a similar building, could share and rent that facility?
Oh, anybody can rent it, right.
If I may, really the only restriction that has to do with Ashfield is to be a member. It's open to any resident of Ashfield 18 years and older to be a voting member. If you live outside of Ashfield, you can be an associate member, just not vote. As far as it goes, it's open to anybody in the world.
I guess along another subject, I'm always concerned about our elderly and their ability to get around, transportation, to the extent that Meals on Wheels can work for people who need it. I think those are 2 key things from my point of view.
Can I add to your elderly?
Absolutely.
I think transportation itself to leave Ashfield,
Yeah.
whether it be, doctor's appointments, Northampton, Greenfield, hopefully they're closer as opposed to Boston, but maybe we don't want to limit it to just being within a certain radius. There's also transportation to get food, not just for doctor's appointment, that kind of venture. What I have noticed, there's a point at which some of the elders will no longer be driving, or financial situations might limit their having a vehicle at all, in which case then you're in one of the hill towns and it's hard to get out.
I wish Frank Whitman was here. But we do have a band in town that the seniors,
It's the Council on Aging.
Council on Aging try to operate. It's you gotta have qualifications, to be drivers and do all these other things, plus the maintenance on the vehicle and so forth. Personally, I don't believe it's something that we have and we do something with. I mean, Frank Wickland seems to do quite a lot with it. He tries to do a lot with it, but he can't be available like a more professional type service might be. In my mind, it's something that we have. I don't think it's a long-term remedy. You know, as far as it being more of a regionalized, some type of a regionalized setup, if we could fund that, we could have better equipment, more qualified drivers and that sort of thing.
And it's nice, I think, if we have that kind of transportation service, then people don't have to call on friends and sort of feel that you're imposing on them, even though they say it's fine. There's a service, you can sign up for it and pre-schedule it, obviously, in most cases. It just feels a little more in control of being able to organize your life and be independent.
Peter?
We just went online, $1,700 roughly.
I guess I was off by quite a bit then.
Pretty close.
Along those same lines, I believe that FRTA goes to Mohawk and picks up people. So I think, did you say your other member towns were Holly and Charlemont?
Holly, Charlemont, and
And Heath. So I bet you they'd all have similar situations for elderly to get to grocery stores and doctor appointments. And they either have to take that once a day or once a week effort. I saw it in this newsletter, but I'm trying to find it now, and it's not very aggressive. It's not something you can necessarily plan on, you know, if you're elderly and trying to get around to these appointments.
So, Mr. Wickland, I speak about you twice and then you magically appear.
I'll return if you wish.
We're having a hearing right now on the Community Development Block Grant Program. And MJ here is trying to solicit some ideas on what we can use it for. And we had thrown out that probably some help with transportation or something to do with the Council on Aging and that sort of thing, if there was money available. As far as if there was a way to have more qualified people, more available, a number of them for transportation needs, and maybe at some
That would
point.
definitely be a help. It's something we need to discuss further separately.
Well, I remember about a month ago, you ended the meeting saying that you felt that it was going to become quite an issue.
I do.
And it's an aging population. I mean, it's a given. It's not like there's a group of people that are going to become more and more, I think, in need of that kind of assistance.
Ever since somebody came in like 8 or 10 months ago and told us that, we just find that we need to repeat it, no?
Well, I hadn't noticed before they pointed it out so dramatically.
I do know that, I believe on December 12th, the PERCOG is doing a whole presentation about the aging population here in Brandon County, what the demographics look like over the next 15, 20 years.
It's not just Ashfield.
No, it's not just Ashfield. I'll share with you that this issue, this elderly transit issue, has come up in other communities as we've had information.
Good.
To be on people's minds.
Any other issues or ideas or possibilities that should be thrown out? I guess there's not any bad ideas, it's just ideas we can follow through on, right?
You'll continue to do as you have for septic systems, repairs to roofs. I mean, that's kind of a standard.
I wanted to share with you a little what we've done this year. We've completed 3 projects. You have a housing rehab revolving loan fund. You authorized us to undertake and prioritize emergency repairs. We've completed 3 rehab projects in the past year. The funds that we now have available are only about $34,000 left in the pot. And we have 4 pre-applications, people who have expressed interest in needing money. So we would like to share with you from HRS perspective that we do think that there's an ongoing need for some funds to go into housing rehabilitation.
Do any of the other communities come up with, or, I mean, maybe it would work as far as a need, but with all the regulations and so forth that get imposed on these small communities, to help in administering some of the needs, you know, like record keeping or you know, maybe modernizing our IT and that sort of thing. Is that part of this, or is that not really addressed? And I guess, have any of the other communities brought that up?
I do hear, as I'm waiting for my parents to start, clearly conversations about the capacity of small towns to be able to manage their affairs. I think that's a real challenge, given what seems to be an increasing regulatory environment and demands on town staff, many of whom are volunteers. Where I see it going for the most part, is I think the COG channels a lot of discussion around it, the Franklin Regional Council of Government. I know they have several programs that try to help regionalize and provide some support services. I think there's a municipal accounting program and inspection services, those type of things. The other thing that the state has available to the smaller communities is peer-to-peer grants, where they can provide a grant or a person to the town to help tackle a specific issue. And it might be somebody who does the same thing that you're looking to have done, but they might do it in another community downriver, and they can come up and provide some technical assistance to help you navigate through getting it set up in your town.
That doesn't happen to be something that we were reading about today in Deerfield, where the state came in. That wasn't under the peer-to-peer deal, that was under local services, where they're talking about strengthening the town administrator's position and.
Right. That was not peer-to-peer, that was Department of Revenue, I think, for a study on management.
But it had nothing to do with block grant money.
You know, since you mentioned elderly transportation, pretty much since I first moved to Ashfield, I've often realized that for people with limited access to transportation in general, they don't have a way to get out of here other than finding a ride or hitchhiking. So if there was a van, say, going back and forth to Mohawk twice a day, and especially if it wasn't full, then it would be nice to have access for anybody who needed the transportation to be able to get back and forth and hook up with the FRTA.
Good point.
Almost like a feeder bus type situation.
Yeah.
What is your name, sir?
Michael Epstein.
Anything else? Anybody else with any? Bill, you normally have something to offer. Not tonight.
Go ahead.
I understand you have another hearing.
Yes, I do. I'm going to do that here. The next step is for us to take a look at these a little more closely. I'll be in touch with Mary and we'll start working. We've already started on the community development strategy. So we'll be back visiting with you sometime in December to update that. Okay?
That's great.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Is the,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good. All right, payroll, warrants.
We need to get to this piece, and then we start. Want me to hold up so you can keep going?
What? Yeah. If you want. It's not gonna be.
Because you already both signed.
It isn't gonna be the end of the world either way. Finance committee isn't here.
Yeah, I did see an email exchange between the whole committee and be here tonight, but they probably thought they'd come around late, wasn't sure how long the hearing would last.
Tom Poisson called me today. He couldn't make it as late hours. We kind of figured that we were gonna be, we'd be spending more time on this community block grant deal. So he has a recommendation.
And you each have a copy of his recommendation in the folder.
There you go, I will look in the folder.
And then we also had scheduled for the meeting on the 4th, which was canceled, a report from Tom about the materials bids.
So,
Is that in here too?
No, it's not the material bid, sorry, it's the, well, it's what you saw October 7th for the grader. And then it was just in the meeting. Come back in case he was here and wanted to talk about it again with the finance committee.
so, Tom Poisson's, I'm looking at his memorandum dated today for a new hire. He received 11 applicants for the advertised position. After review, his recommendation is to hire Todd Sackle to fill that position. He meets the qualifications, has the required CDL Class B license as well as a Class 2A hoisting license, hoisting engineering license. He's qualified to be a driver, laborer, and operator. And so I spoke with Tom today on the telephone and said that Tom would accept the position, but he wants to get a few days of hunting season under his belt before they get started, so probably not too long after the 1st of December.
I think the last time we did this, we had a motion, so I move, unless you had some further discussion, to hire Tom Senecal per the recommendation. Did I say it wrong?
Todd.
Oh, I'm sorry, Todd. It's right in front of me.
We
Todd
don't need too
Senecal.
many more Toms.
I'm looking at you and I got confused, huh? Per Tom Poisson's recommendation to fill the position he has available in the highway department.
I'll second that.
The only thing that I would add is last time we hired an employee, we went through the same type of probationary period to get started where they're at a slightly lower rate, which was, so we agree to that as
Did
part
I
of
do
that.
50 cents or something like that?
That's what sticks into my mind, but
You think Tom's fine with that?
yes, oh yes. But I've just included that as part of the discussion, so we all know we're on the same page.
Didn't we do 90 days last time as
It was
well?
I was thinking it was 50 cents for 60 days, but it could have been 90.
Agreed.
That'd be friendly and
I'm fine with
Yes.
any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So in my discussions with Tom today, he had one issue down on Baptist Corner Road and they were mowing that some multifloral rose that was being propagated got mowed. He says he's handling that. That doesn't seem to be an insurmountable issue. If it was multifloral rose, it will
It was a
grow back.
forsythia.
It was forsythia.
I was going
It'll
to
grow
say,
back.
it propagates. Yeah.
It'll grow back.
So he's in touch with
He's
people.
absolutely in touch. And then there was one other.
And then there was another piece of mail from Jean Silver.
About a
mentioning
tree.
concern about a tree at the edge of her property.
That needs to,
That-
need some attention.
Yep, and
And Tom says he has been in contact with the power company because the lines, I believe, run right through that tree, so. My guess is that there'll be a day where that tree will get pruned. How close,
One way.
how close to the ground is the only question, but,
And how it happens.
well, and, once, I mean, I think it's, we all need to be aware that, and Tom certainly is, I think he's very good. If somebody brings it to his attention, he tries to make some motion on it, because once you're aware of a town tree in somebody's property, it's one thing if you don't know, but if you do know, then you get it addressed. So he's working with, trying to keep it off of the tree warden's budget, which is great.
Okay.
And then when we're looking for the finance committee to get some input on how to finance the grader before it shows up. Tom said he was going to call this afternoon after I spoke with him to try to narrowed down what the delivery date may or
Okay.
may not be on that. He didn't have it with him when I spoke to him.
Did they give him an estimate?
Well, they said like 10 to 14 weeks from when we gave them the order.
I was looking at January.
What do you got?
Asked him if he could grab Dell because the amount of time that MJ had given us for the hearing was a little longer than we ended up taking.
That's
And
fine.
so people were planning to come in at about
8 o'clock.
Yep.
That's fine. Well, once we go through that warrant, we can cross that off the list.
We could also advance the minutes.
Huh?
We could advance the minute.
He's not over there yet? Well, that's all right, we'll find something to do. We'll get these bills paid to start with. The last set of minutes were pretty much a month ago. Were they forwarded by email? I can't.
They were, would you like a copy?
I think I've got them here.
Okay.
Thought I had lost them for a minute.
Do you happen to know the electric consultant, the work is that here in town hall?
That was at the firehouse?
It was the fire, because the account says firehouse and town hall,
Yeah.
that's what I was asking.
Yep, and actually part of it was for the plug-in for the speed sign for the police department.
And that needs a little power, yes, thank you. Ooh, speaking of trees. Yep, you saw that one, of course.
He's been on the list for quite a little while.
Mhm. It's good David Moore is keeping tabs on the prioritized.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yep.
set up a table over there if you expect your entire board to show up.
Well, that may not happen.
It is Monday night football.
What's that?
There is Monday night football tonight.
I've heard that.
Paulette's going over the warrants here. We're did a few things at one time. Just to bring you up to date a little bit, we started out the evening with, which might be of interest to you, with the tax classification hearing with the assessor. So the projected rate for this year is $16.16.
16.
We can get you whatever information you want that we have on that. The assessors certainly have all of it. But what was interesting
Yep.
is a $5 million reduction in valuation. So that as the valuation goes down, the rate goes up.
Perfect.
So our current year is 1509,
Yeah.
and the prior year was 1469.
Okay. So for 2014, it's the 16.
16.
Thank you.
Bills are paid. Any? All right. Go right to the minutes. Whatever, let's hit these. You have a copy?
Yes, I do.
Takes me a minute to review. It was pretty much a month ago. Paulette, if you have any notes on yours, don't be bashful to lead off, or Ron, either.
I think I only found one little typo on page 2 of 5. And it's about in the middle of the paragraph. And the sentence starts, the grant application is due in February, and July is usually when the announcements are. And I think there's just an extra A at the end, so it should be TS instead of TAS. And I also want to compliment, since I'm the one in the past who has said they were far too brief, these are good minutes in terms of having content.
Is that pretty much it on your end, Paulette?
That's all I found.
Yeah, I'll second what Paulette said about the format. In all the minutes I've ever seen, these are, I like the way this flows. You've done a good job in formatting it too. It's really easy to read and bold and right justified and a lot of stuff. It's a very professional job, so thank you for doing that, Susan. I do have a comment on page 4 or 5. Town council estimates is like the third paragraph down. The last line of that says, Carter asked Kohler, we're talking about the town council.
Yes.
Carter asked Kohler to respond to town council as soon as possible. And what we really did is Carter asked Kohler to respond and have her proceed as soon as possible. It was an acknowledgement of her fee and let's go and make it happen fast.
Right, move on.
Move on. So I just inserted after the word council and have her proceed as soon as possible. And that was all I had, other than adding the standard things, which is, once we accept the minutes as amended, that the draft be added to the document list. You know how we do that? Do you know how we do that?
There's a standard
The amended minutes and a copy of the agenda.
And add them to the,
And of the document list.
it's a kind of standard pro forma type.
Do you have any comments on
I
that?
was great. It sounded like exactly how I remembered it.
So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended for October 21st, 2013.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Done. Easy peasy. All right. Ted, do you expect to be the only finance committee member here?
I know of two people who cannot definitely make it tonight. I'm prepared to represent the finance committee to facilitate the meeting moving on.
That's great.
If I'm joined by two other colleagues, I'm happy to have them chip in where they'd like, but I'm ready to go.
Okay. Well, so it came up, these minutes we just approved. I had put out there that we've accepted the bids on the grader, the new grader, and we're expecting it to come in about $50,000 less than we budgeted.
Correct.
Made allowances for,
Yep.
which is a wonderful thing.
Yep.
And I know that you've already spoken with your committee, but the idea was knowing what we know now compared to what we knew in February and March.
Sure.
Did anybody have any ideas on anything to change as far as the financing scheme?
Well, as I think I passed on to you all, is our recommendation of the finance committee when we last met, mindful of this bid having been received considerably below what we had initially imagined or projected at the annual town meeting. We thought that it made sense to kind of minimize the amount of debt that we take on to afford this. And so we voted unanimously at our last Finance Committee meeting on November 6th. We voted to recommend to the Select Board that the town pay for the new grader by raising and appropriating $80,000, transferring $55,000 from free cash, both as originally stipulated at annual town meeting, and borrowing the balance of the purchase price, which at that time we understood to be about $62,000, whatever it might be, via a debt exclusion of 2 years duration, thinking that if we went from our original projection of $150,000 and borrowed it down to something more like $62,000 or whatever the amount would be, over 2 years it would be far preferable, trying to minimize debt costs. And it also seemed to fit within the meaning, as we understood it, of the original motion at the annual town meeting, which was approved by the town, where it was specified raising and appropriating $80,000, transferring $55,000 from free cash, and then borrowing up to $150,000. And we thought this was all within that spirit. And we also thought that we ought to do what we can to protect our free cash and stabilization accounts, so not to dip in more than we needed to free cash, but stay within the original motion. So our notion is to simply stay with the original financing approach and minimize the amount of borrowing. And perhaps that could be done over a 2-year.
The total amount of our purchase, I mean, we're purchasing the grader and
The blade.
the blade. Is the total of how much, Mary?
Did you hear me?
$223,206. That's per Tom's projections, the last data sheet I had. And that's down from what we had estimated of $285,000, which is about a $62,000 saving. Now, it may be different given some of the detail.
What was the final borrowing number that you had? I didn't catch it.
I had $61,794.
Okay. And Laura got some quotes on that, and so it would be 0.70% for 1 year and 1.00% for 2 years on the 61,794.
Those look like pretty good terms.
I'm just not adding up correctly, so go through the whole.
Our total of the purchase, the grader and the accessory, is 200 and 212.
I'm sorry, what I had here was this, that if you stay with the Southworth Milton dealership and the Caterpillar bid, the total final bid price on Tom's sheet was $217,761. The optional dozer blade, which he said he wanted, was $5,445.
Right.
The sum of those two figures, I come up with $223,206.
Correct.
If you deduct $223,206 from the $285,000 mentioned at annual town meeting,
It's a savings of.
that's where I came up with the 60, what did I say, 61,794, if my math is correct.
But what I'm coming up with is what we're gonna need to borrow is $88,206.
Yeah, as opposed to 60.
Well, that could be. Why is that? Interest
Because
rate?
I think he grabbed the wrong number.
Yeah.
I think you grabbed what we saved, not grabbed what the balance is.
Right.
When you
and
said
I
to
think
borrow,
I
you
passed
said
that on
borrow
to Laura.
62.
Yes, I did.
And when I add them up, it's short of 200,000. so. Unless I get another number.
I mean, I'd rather spend what we saved than spend what we bought, but it's just not gonna work out. So 223,206 was the number that I had in my mind,
Okay.
minus the $135,000
Yep.
that came from taxation and free cash that we've
Okay.
already appropriated,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
How much was that number again?
135,000,
Okay.
which leaves 88,206.
You're right.
And those rates again, Mary?
And the rates, but they were on the other numbers, sorry, and the rates were 0.7 for 1 year and 1% for 2 years. And that was.
You're absolutely right. I retract my statement. We would need to borrow $88,206. But that likely can be done over 2 years' time. I would imagine the terms of the borrowing would be significantly different from what Mary mentioned, and I'm sorry for misleading.
Well, I don't know if the rate would be any different.
No,
I don't imagine the rate would be
No.
any different. So my, I'm in total alignment with what the finance committee came up with. I just wanted to see if somebody had another idea, because we had no idea what we were gonna have for free cash and so forth
no,
available.
we in fact explored in our discussion the question of whether we could spend more on free cash, because we have quite a sizable balance. I think, I understand it to be on the order of $322,000 at this point. But we also have some $400,000, I think, plus maybe $423 in the stabilization account. And we felt in many respects it's wise to keep those preserved, and that we stay true to the original intent of town meeting by kind of minimizing borrowing. So and it was unanimous. We had 4 people in attendance. It was a 4-0-0 vote to make this recommendation. And again, I apologize for the misleading.
No, that's a simple mistake. Any other concerns about how we should go forward?
Sounds.
I mean, if we make a decision now, then when it comes, it's just an automatic deal, and we can not holding up the works if it shows up on Christmas Eve with a big bow on it or anything. Let me bounce this around. I would think the thing to do would be to authorize the treasurer to borrow the $88,206 on a 1-year note at that 0.7 rate. It's a little bit of rolling the dice if the rate goes up, but at the same time, we may have the opportunity to pay this and not, depending on how the budget turns out, we could just because we have a debt exclusion doesn't mean we have to go to the tax bill to collect all that money. I mean, we could decide that we wanted to pay that note with a town meeting vote out of another funding source if it becomes available. And that would just leave the door open if we just borrowed it on 1 year. And then roll it over. You know,
Yep.
if we decided at town meeting that we wanted to pay $44,000 of it, then we could just borrow the 44 again. If our credit's in good standing. Oh, here's Mr. Knoll.
Hello. Now, be mindful that, I don't know if this will change your thinking at all, but we do have, in terms of estimated capital needs going out to fiscal year 2015, another $285,000 projected, again from the highway department. This being, now this is just their estimates, $125,000 for a backhoe, $160,000 for a dump truck. I don't have any estimates at this point from other departments, but I would wonder if the police department might be back with also some kind of estimate of a need of a replacement of the Ford Explorer. But we are in a very, I think, a very strong position in terms of free cash and stabilization, barring any unforeseen circumstance that may be relative to a 1-year note.
We got either a long or a short winter in front of us. You know.
Yes.
A good friend of mine told me the other day, if you don't like a long winter, the key is to take out a 90-day note on the 1st of December and it'll go by like that.
I see.
So, David, what we're just talking about is there's a 30% difference in borrowing rates between a 1-year and a 2-year note. The difference is 1% or 0.7%. And I was just trying to get our ducks in a row, hoping that we would just authorize the treasurer to, it would be prudent to borrow the $88,000 on a 1-year note, and then we can decide how much of it we want to pay after 1 year and roll over the balance. I don't particularly seem to think interest rates are going to go up a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah. I want to ask my chairman a question. I don't know, we don't have a quorum, but I imagine that would be permissible, right?
It could be in the form of a conversation,
A
discussion.
conversation.
Yes, sir.
Is Don here tonight?
No,
Okay,
nor Ricky.
okay, so we will not have a quorum.
We don't at this point.
Tom had laid out what I thought would be a sound approach to it.
Well, I've already made that recommendation.
Okay.
That they do the next one tomorrow.
Right. Okay, where are we?
We're at the point where I made a really mistake in the sense that the total cost is going to be $223,000 giving Tom Poisson's estimate.
Mm-hmm.
There's $135,000 provided for in terms of raising the appropriate $80,000 and using free cash $55,000, so that leaves $88,206 to be financed with borrowing. I mistakenly put a different number. That number will be either 2 years or 1 year. And if you do a borrowing for 1 year, they checked out, it's about 0.7% rate. If you do a 2-year borrowing, it's more than 1% rate.
Now, as I remember,
Tom is suggesting now that we do a 1-year borrowing at that rate.
there were 3 variables. We had free cash and appropriation and borrowing.
Correct.
And the town meeting vote is not flexible.
We thought, no, that the 80,000 was the raise and appropriate,
Right.
like this.
Ron, do you have any thoughts while they're getting up?
Raise and
We
appropriate.
don't necessarily have to fully expend the appropriation. Appropriation is there. We don't
Depreciation schedules.
What are your thoughts?
Well, we wrote it for.
It's kind of an argument to say,
Okay.
pay it off before the next capital expense
Transfer
that would
55
give
from
them,
free cash.
whether that be 2 or
And
3
borrow the balance.
percent, 2 or 3
Which
years.
is not the
So we're in agreement. on
Yeah,
it.
we're fully
So
agreed on
the
the
question
1
is
year
term
seems like
whether
and
it's 1 year or 2.
No, my idea isn't to pay it in 1
Yeah,
year.
no, okay.
My idea
I
is
think
to
it's
take
fine
the
to go
lower
over
interest
it.
rate for a year,
Okay, point.
then as we
0.7%.
go through the budget process,
Okay.
we'll decide how much we can pay and then roll the balance.
Renegotiate. at that point.
Well, it leaves the
Options open.
it leaves the options wide open.
I guess that just makes sense.
I'll just speak for myself. I think your recommendation is sound.
It leaves all the options open, and then if we decide that we don't like the idea of this tax rate going the direction that it's going, and we have excess revenue or excess funds available that we want to pay some of this with that to save it from showing up on the tax rate, we can make that decision.
At the last meeting, we noted, the certified cash amount was discussed, by our committee. It came in, we projected it, in a rough way. I agree with that. I think we're in a sound position. Do it for 1 year.
Part of our philosophy in trying to reduce, in that instance where we discussed it, going from what we thought originally was going to be a 3-year borrowing back to a 2-year borrowing, and now you're suggesting 1-year borrowing.
Well,
I understand, it could be rolled over, I understand. But a lot of our philosophy was in trying to kind of wean ourselves away from this continual rolling over of debt exclusions, recognizing that this is one of these things that we always explain to the citizens of the town as a temporary matter. And yet we manage pretty consistently to say, okay, the dump truck having come off the debt exclusion will put something back on, but it's only temporary. And then 2 years later, we take that off and say, see, it was only temporary, but here's something else. It's called a back-end loader. And, we keep rolling this thing in a way that I think we're trying to see if we can't do something to back away from that and still be fiscally prudent about it.
I
So we've wrapped ourselves.
I certainly understand. I think sometimes it's what may seem to be practical.
Right.
But politically doesn't seem to hold a whole lot of water in Ashfield getting a debt exclusion back.
Right.
I mean, we can get a debt exclusion, but to get a 2.5 override to get us to the point to finance that seems to be politically elusive.
Right.
And this way, at least they know exactly what the extra is being spent.
Correct. Correct.
Paulette, did you? Any questions or comments or?
Oh, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
When you
No,
get
go
done.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so in May, when we decide, let's say, to pay part of this off, and then we would have to ask to renegotiate, and let's say only half of it, 44,000, to have it as a loan for a year, with the intent that we're hoping that rate is not going to be above 1% or above 0.7%. Okay.
Well, you would renegotiate the loan on its anniversary. So if the grader comes on the 15th of January, let's say, and that's when the treasurer borrows that money, you will have almost another whole year to decide how much you want to pay. But we can budget half of it or whatever we find that's prudent as we go through the budget process. I mean, it gives us a lot of time
Yes.
with some pretty cheap money.
Yes.
Okay.
I was just curious. The three of you are one mind on this?
I'm of one mind.
Oh, I'm not asking you.
I would have been inclined to go with the 2 years and the 1%, because the difference is 0.3% on the difference for the loan. But if doing 1 year gives us some options that may get better for the town in the long run, that's fine. But my inclination was 2 years originally. With the
Well, we may choose at the conclusion of the 1 year to roll it over, unrepaid debt, and then you're back into the 2-year situation, but likely it wouldn't be significantly different terms at that point. That's a hunch, of course, you don't know for a fact. But but given the economy, I would think that's very likely.
How do you do that if you've taken a loan from somebody for a year and they want 88,000? How is it that at the end of the year you say, oh, by the way, we're only going to pay you half and we want to reloan the other half, borrow the half again?
Sure. The bank renegotiates loans all the time.
Yeah, they'll
I
just,
mean, they'll be happy to do that. They'll be happy to roll that over.
I think you just call them up and renegotiate and say, we'd like to extend this longer, and, you know, we'll pay you half, and, or
They'll
we'll
just,
pay you $70,000, we'll have the balance for a little bit longer.
And they don't give you a penalty for that?
Well, they might jack the rate up a little bit and say, if you want to do that, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but,
depending on the market.
yeah.
No, I mean, an actual penalty kind of.
I don't think so. I think no.
I mean, it is, like Paulette says, it is only a point, 0.3%, but that is a 30% savings.
Yes.
I just mentioned to Paulette that Thanksgiving night.
That sounds
will be
impressive,
lined up
but it's-
down the road.
That sounds impressive, but on an annual basis, that's only a couple $100.
That's right, that's right. So is there a motion, so we can make them vote, so when it comes time, the treasurer can just do it? And at some point, we need to authorize the treasurer for this borrowing. I'll make a motion that we authorize the treasurer to borrow $88,206 when the time comes to pay for the grader, the new grader, and to put that on a one-year note.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
And we're in agreement that if necessity dictate, we will go for rollover for 1 year. We're all of one mind on that.
Whatever we decide at that point,
At that point.
which
But there's no resistance to that
it'll,
at this point in time.
it'll be a lot clearer at that point.
Yeah. I don't know what we're looking at next year now. I saw a precipitous decline in Mohawk's enrollment, and in a conversation with Ted said, alarming, and the question is how from town to town those numbers play, and then how will the 5-year average that's going to play, and how with the maintenance budget the school has, and I'm looking at vocational numbers, and I'm getting a little nervous at some of the things I'm looking at. So,
Well, why don't we continue that discussion, but let's get this motion off the table.
well, I didn't mean to bring it up only as it related to the point.
Well, I want to, right, I understand. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. So there's something that's not waiting until the last minute. David, I'll give you a quick little synopsis of what you missed earlier this evening, as we had a tax meeting on the tax rate to decide if it was one tax classification hearing. It's going to be one tax rate, just the way that we've always had it. The projected tax rate for this year, according to the assessors, is $16.16, which is an increase from $15.09. And the year before, which would have been fiscal year 12, right? Fiscal year 13, and we're at $15.09 now. Last year was $14.69.
So it's about a 7% jump this year.
What was interesting to me, and the assessors are married, we've got the information, the valuation in the town that this is based on dropped $5 million.
Which
Mostly
is,
in residential.
what's a rough estimated percentage of valuation decline?
It's like 2.5%.
2.5%. That's about
Down.
And I'll scan this in and email it to the finance committee.
So what's always, it's not the rate that you pay, right? It's the bill. So we'll see.
So it's still an aggregate, probably an average around 4.5% then?
Which I think is what we roughly had in our mind when we.
Well, I don't know.
But anyway, that's where we are on that. The other thing we had on for Finance Committee, just to give you an idea on firehouse and town hall expenses. Mary, Mary get you information on where we are? We're kind of running through that $10,000, I believe it was, that we appropriated.
And I did not give them any
You didn't get
extra information.
Okay.
Sorry.
One of the things that I was toying with, if you let me bring up my email here a little bit. You've got copies, I'm sure, from Captain Thomas on our latest expense report.
Yep.
We drew money from the town hall firehouse capital account
Yep.
for painting. The number that's bouncing around in my head is about $4,500.
Yep.
In the past, painting, I mean, we didn't have a discussion about painting the town hall over the winter. I mean, it was something that, an oversight, as far as I can tell. But historically, we've used Fred Cross in the past for painting this building, the Fred Cross Fund.
Yep.
The accountant, in discussions, Mary, you had discussions directly,
Directly asked her.
that when the time came for a special town meeting, if we wanted to vote money out of Fred Cross for painting, then she would make a journal entry to replenish this town hall, that town hall firehouse. It's just something that maybe you would want to be aware of. At the same time, Brian, I understand it has to do with the green community deal. We have to spend some money at the firehouse so we can keep the green communities money, is that correct? So we can be in a position?
One of the projects we want to do on the firehouse is replacing the office heater, which is currently an obsolete and barely functioning LP space heater with a heat pump. The energy audit showed that that would be the most efficient thing to do. That requires an additional circuit, which Poissant, the electrician, is saying is not possible to do without an upgrade to a badly needed upgrade to the service for the firehouse. That's been a kind of a sore point for a while, that the existing service is overloaded and kind of a rat's nest. So this is kind of pushing us over the edge where we need to do that service upgrade in order to spend the green communities money to put in the recommended heating source, heating facility for the office space.
What's the amount of the green community dollars?
For the heat pump, it's several $1,000s. I don't have the exact figure off the top of my head.
And Tom's getting you a estimate, or
Rob?
Did I say Tom? Yeah, I meant Rob. The shorter one. He's getting you a,
Mary's been pursuing that with him.
Has he not called you yet?
I haven't heard anything.
I saw him Saturday at the store, and I told him that the estimate, the proposal, the purchase order, whatever we want to call it, was important. But he said, well, how soon do we have to nail it to the wall? Because he's looking at his holiday schedule and so forth. And I told him, as far as I was concerned, if we had the projection and we could budget the money and know that it was going to work, then probably it could. As far as I was aware, the window was open as far as actually getting the work done within reason.
Yeah, the thing I need from the green community standpoint is a reasonable idea of the schedule, because that's part of what I have to submit. That I have to submit to the state a proposal for putting the heater in that includes detailed schedule and financing and so on. So I need all of that in order to get approval from the state to spend money for the
So-
heater.
When I talked to him, he said he was gonna, and that was, I think not last week, but the week before, he said he was gonna contact you and get you something in writing before the end of November, and maybe do the work beginning of December. But I'll give him a call again tomorrow and
Okay.
ask him to do it.
I think that's still his schedule, but he just didn't want to think that he had to take everybody off. I mean, it's not just his work schedule, you know, that we're coming up against. We've got Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
there's a Christmas holiday, New Year's, and in between, there's like 2 weeks of deer hunting. Okay, we have to be aware of this when we want to get anything done this last 8th of the year. I'm painfully aware.
Well, it isn't exceedingly urgent, it's just that I need the information of the schedule in order to proceed with the state to get approval.
And I did stress that it was the information you needed as quickly as possible, so.
Yeah,
So we're working on it.
yeah.
What's the implication of this, that you're envisaging an additional amount of money needed beyond the $10,000 to handle something like this electrical stuff, and that has to be done prior to you applying through green communities to get a heat pump?
I need some reasonable assurance that sequence of activities is going to occur
Right.
and the schedule of it in order to apply. It doesn't have to have taken place.
But the heat pump investment is not something that comes out of the town's budget, it comes out of a state.
That will be
For some kind of
financed out of the
fund.
green communities budget, assuming we get state approval, which I think is a
So you're really talking about an electrical piece of work that has to get done, rewiring,
Well,
circuits.
upgrading the service.
and I think my concern is that, and Dell certainly would need your input on it, is that we don't want to add to the rat's nest.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
if we need to go in,
not
you know, if
possible.
that service needs to go from I think it's only 100 amp service, isn't it?
Yes, you must go to 200, can't add anything more to it.
And you know, maybe we want to do something a little more than that to do it absolutely correctly, but it needs to be done at some point.
Can it be done within the $10,000?
Well, we probably won't even have the full $10,000. I was just looking that up here.
Well, take the $4,500 out from the painting until such time a special town meeting might come and transfer monies.
We got less than 3,000 in there now.
I see. Left.
So this may be one of those situations where it sounds like this is pushing us, this heat pump business is kind of pushing us. We've got to make a decision. And do we do a $3,000 job when it really deserves in the long run to be a $7,000 job? And I'm pulling those numbers out of my head.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Ron, what do you, I mean, I'm kind of laying this on you, and
Sounds
Paul,
like plans to me, you know, the Fred Cross account's available.
I think the Fred Cross is the easy part of the equation. It may be whatever we may need beyond that.
Yeah, until we get the estimate, we really don't have a clue, right?
But I want to make everybody aware that it's out there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Town hall maintenance, the original budget was $12,900, and it now has remaining $9,000. So how is it that we didn't charge the painting to that account instead of Firehouse Town Hall?
Because
Which would have dropped, then that wouldn't be down by so much.
Well, the $9,000 or the $12,000 original budget we never included painting.
No, Andy wasn't.
That was about the basement and all of that.
That was about
And
every,
remember, you folded some lines together, so town hall maintenance now is also office supplies as well as other things, so it's pretty tight to what we expected to be.
when we went through the budget line by line, we talked about absolutely everything except painting.
Right. It had come up the year before, though, it's just we weren't able to get the people here to do it the year before, yeah. Okay.
So I think we're in a hold mode, right? I mean, there's,
As soon as Tom gets us, Rob gets us a proposal, but Dale, I'm sure you'll be there when he's looking it over to try to pull that all together.
We've already gone through it.
It would be, well, we need to contact him, if I don't see him first, to say that probably it would be prudent for us to do that. And I'm getting the feeling that the select board's position would be, we want to do the good job and not the regular, you know, what has been the regular of just adding on and cobbling things together. I mean, to run the heat pump, you shouldn't have to shut all the lights and heaters off the trucks and stuff in the firehouse.
well, we've had issues with it even without the heat pump, right?
Right, so. If I can think of it, to call him, sometimes I see him for coffee. But does that sound like the right kind of direction? And then just make sure we get the proposal as soon as we do.
Let us know when you get that proposal, I think that's important.
In Finance Committee, have you had any other thing that you wanted to bring up with us since you're here?
Elevator?
I said,
Elevator, I just put that letter in, thought you might mention it before, the elevator.
I did send, as you suggested, a letter to FERCog requesting that we have our 4 units in town, handicap lifts, added to the next contract. In the meantime, I had talked to the representative from Eagle Elevator, and she seemed perfectly willing to have us added. And in fact said, if you have problems in the interval, you know, we could work out something for you, Ashfield, without having to go through FERCog, until such time as you get to be part of the FERCog master contract. However, I indicated that because we'd already passed paperwork through Garavetta, we felt somewhat committed to kind of hold that course for now, although it's arguably more expensive. To date, we've had no feedback from either the state or Garaventa about when these lift inspections will take place, so that still hangs out there. However, we're technically within compliance because we've made the application through the Commonwealth and through Garaventa. Andrea Woods at FERCog said that she would in fact add us, you know, in the next contract. So that's all good. Then one other thing I do have.
No progress, but all good.
No progress, but it's very good, yes. But one other thing I would add, and there's not much to report, and that is that I put in a call to Tom Scanlon about this matter of unfunded pension liabilities and unfunded OPEB, or other post-employment benefits, which is chiefly healthcare related costs. Noting again in our the notes to our financial statements in the audit, it talks about each of these being over $500,000 for the town of Ashfield, which according to this kind of regular newsletter we get, the Beacon, they speak to the degree to which this is a very commonplace problem throughout the Commonwealth, saying that in the Commonwealth, state and local employees and retirees, there's about a $146 billion liability, of which only about 43% is funded. That there's a lot of unfunded pension benefits and a lot of unfunded retiree health care benefits. And that describes us to a T. So I'm calling Tom Scanlon to, in effect, ask, what do we do about this, if anything? I read in this article that some towns are actually setting up trust funds of a sort where they start now putting in reserves. Theoretically, as I understand it, the retirement board, for example, is calling for money from us, which we contribute, which is designed to eventually catch up to these unfunded liabilities. But it seems to me that we're way behind the 8 ball on that, and I'm not sure that's sufficient, or whether we should be more prudent and try to actually develop our own independent trust funds to start to build. It may come to affect some of our budgeting decisions. I don't think it's going to be hugely disproportionate to anything we've got in mind on regular budgeting, but that may come up again. So when I learn more from Tom, I'll come back with some further thoughts about it. But it's just out there, long-term future. And of course, these are all actuarially determined liabilities, so there's a lot of this kind of probabilistic or stochastic thinking about it.
Well, this is all stems from this idea that, you put it down to the future, it may be a little bit more, but, you're always paying it with cheaper dollars.
Yes. Right.
But somebody still has to earn those dollars.
Yes. Right.
Well,
Bill from...
I just want to clarify, the retirement system is catching up now with the fees that they're charging us, forward funding it. And that's only toward the pensions, not toward
Health insurance,
right, health insurance. The Council of Governments just established its own trust fund, put $100,000 into it this year in an effort to start catching up. And it's been the advice of them and most other people that the town at least get started on putting the money aside. There is no mandate to do it. You're not required to, but it's a strong suggestion not to leave that level of unfunded liability out there. But the only thing the town directly has to deal with is the health insurance.
Well, along those lines, what is the comfort level of unfunded liability? What do you get? What percentage? And how many dollars is that?
That I'm not clear about.
I mean, it seems like something we ought to know.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that if you do have money that you put aside for paying health insurance, if you have a tight year, even though you may not have all the money that you want or need, you can take money out of that fund to pay retirees' health insurance if required, so that you're not putting the money away forever. You're putting the money away for a specific use, and if it comes time that you happen to have a particularly tight year, you can dip into that fund.
Well, there's a number of problems. There's a number of problems because when we talk about this unfunded liability, if we look at the environment that we're living in today, we not only don't, it's impossible to put a number to it because we have no idea what insurance is going to cost in 6 months, never mind in 16 years.
There's never a number. There's never a final amount that you need. What you need is a percentage of what you're going to owe, and that'll build. The point is, if you now have nothing, what you want to do is to start catching up. It then becomes up to the town and finance committee to decide when to start using that.
But it seems like it certainly is a reason to always be thinking we want to minimize the number of employees.
But you want
That reduces your liability right there by just not having...
You want them to be single and you want them to die shortly after retirement. Is basically what you want. So working to death now.
In other words, throw one hell of a party for them.
You got it.
The only other thing, did you have anything else that you
I think not.
The only other thing I was kicking around in my mind today is, are there any proposals for a schedule to start putting the budget together for next year?
Maybe tentative proposal, but
Here's what I've got in my mind,
Okay.
that I don't mind throwing out there, that with a certain amount of success, it seems like we're able to get along with regular selectmen's business on an every other week basis. And at some point, when we start putting the budget together, if the weeks that we don't have selectmen's meeting, if we could meet together and just concentrate on the budget, I mean, it would be a weekly meeting for us.
Yes.
And as we head head down that road 2 or 3 weeks, if we have to slide an extra few days in, we could do that. I wonder if that's,
I think that's intrinsically very attractive to us. I think it would keep the focus very tightly on the budget during the time we're together for that. It would, I think, be quite efficient if we can work that out.
So we meet now on the payment date of the warrant schedule,
Which is what?
and I have an extra copy of that.
Oh, that's great.
So you would be on the alternate weeks.
Mondays. And Monday nights is your preferred time, yes?
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
We met the finance committee almost every week, February, March, and April. So if we're gonna try this with every other, do we need to start in January? Because you're gonna lose a number of weeks, or you're suddenly gonna be piling them on near the end. Because that's a lot of meetings to distribute
well, I
in
do,
the same amount of time.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and I was wondering if we met every other week, if maybe the meetings wouldn't be slightly longer when we don't have to do any of our other selectmen's meetings before that, going over minutes and doing all those sorts of things. I mean, some weeks we actually signed warrants and did that sort of thing.
We could start a little
And-
earlier.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. At the same time, starting earlier, the school is what holds us up, right? And they're not gonna have anything together till at least March, if not
Right.
1st of April.
But that doesn't preclude us from doing a lot of other things.
No, absolutely, but I don't know, if it does eliminate some of the urgency on my end.
Right.
So we can start, kind of shoot for starting anytime. What I have on my calendar would be, maybe the first meeting we could have would be Monday, February 3rd.
For budget,
For budget,
and then plan on roughly every other week thereafter.
right? The 3rd, the 17th, the 3rd of March, the 17th of March, the
Yep.
31st of March. And that, I don't believe that precludes us at all if we decide every other week we have to meet on a Wednesday also to have appointments and pull that sort of thing together. David, how does that?
Sounds good to me.
Now, that first February 3rd was joint with the finance committee.
Yes.
That
That's
would
what
be,
you're picking.
yeah, that would be a budget meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mary, do you see any problem
No,
with
that
that?
sounds fine, that sounds fine.
Okay. So after the first of, right after New Year's, we can get letters out to department heads and try to get budgets pulled together. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
No.
David?
Before we leave, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I have been keeping you folks up to date. Tomorrow morning, the Vocational Ed Advisory Committee meets, and we may be having to make a rapid-fire decision on bids. I have reported to you that we're looking at a 5-year contract. We're going to be herding the cats of Ashfield, Charlemont, Harley, and Plainfield together on this
Which hasn't seemed to be a problem.
so far. The challenge that we're looking at are the increased rates, which for Franklin Tech, we drive Ashfield, costs up from, I don't have the exact numbers, but if we're lucky on enrollment from 80%, if we're not lucky, up to 160% increases. I can't speak for the committee, but speaking for myself, I'm inclined to think that we have 3 options: of award, a negotiated settlement, or a rebid under the aegis of Mohawk. And I really think we've got to try to do a little better than this. I will keep you informed.
Efficiency and economy. maybe not necessarily in that order, all right?
So there's a big meeting tomorrow, and I'll let you know what happens. And the Finance Committee continues responsible for the oversight of this
Well,
department of our town, and we're doing our best.
I very much appreciate your emails and your updates and all the time that all of you are putting into it. Thanks. Yep. All right, anything else? We're good? Now we can move on to the fire chief.
Thank you.
Dale, you're up.
The CIC state grant that they're trying to get us to join, there's 10 towns so far have joined.
Who's CIC?
Community Innovation Challenge. It's a grant that the Franklin County government's working. What they're trying to do is get all the requirements to work together, have the same paperwork, same reporting systems, same everything. I'm for it, but we just gotta be careful of them. One thing they want is the reporting system. Right now, I pay $510 a year for my reports. The gentleman came to talk to the fire chiefs that they want to hook into dispatch. When we get back, dispatch will have all our reports done and email us, and we just have to finish filling out the report. Well, this gentleman who came to talk to us wants $750 just to join it. Then he wants $150 per month. And I'm going to pay $510 a year. So we gotta be careful with a lot of this stuff, the prices, and we're not saving any money that way. But they're trying to get us, we have to fill in reports for the federal and state, every call I have, medical calls, fire calls, and everything. I get the facts from dispatch and I take it that and put it on my report and send it off to the state. And it's no problem there. But what they're trying to do is get everybody the same, and so if somebody has a major fire, that we can go and look at that person's report and see how that fire started. We might have the same problem in our town. And then equipment-wise and stuff, like this 1710 and 1720, the 1710s for the permit firefighters and the 1720s for volunteers, and the 1500 is all. He wants to go all by these laws. This stuff is not mandatory. It's a guideline. But these guidelines, if we have a major problem, say somebody gets hurt, like our equipment, if it's over 10 years old, our turnout gear, our air pads and stuff is 10 years old, somebody gets hurt, we could be sued. So they want us to keep up all the equipment and stuff, and we're trying to regionalize the departments to hopefully get a cheaper price for equipment. They came out the other day about fire hose. I didn't put anything down because I want my hose tested first. I don't want to go buy a hose unless I know I need it. But they're trying to go by all these laws and stuff, or recommendations. And there's a lot of stuff here that being a volunteer firefighter that we're supposed to know.
So FERCog
Yeah.
has applied for this grant.
They want to know right now how many departments, I need your signature on the paper, how many departments are interested in doing this. Right now you got 10 towns, you got Buckland, New Salem, Window, Wyden, Heathgill, Conway, Turns, Sunderland, and Chalmont, who signed their select board have signed the paper. It's something that we don't have to, once we sign the papers, we don't have to abide by it.
So what is the value to the Ashfield Fire Department as you see it to sign on to this?
The value is if they come up with some good ideas like automatic mutual aid. We don't have automatic mutual aid right now. We have, when we get a call, it's up to who's there in charge, or say, okay, we want mutual aid to respond. This one would be automatic. Every town would have an automatic mutual aid, mainly hopefully daytime. Nighttime we have no problem. Daytime is only about 3 of us around the daytime. We get a call. We are supposed to be, once the call comes in, at the scene within 20 minutes. If you're over 20 minutes, they want to know why it took you so long to get to that scene. When we go mutual aid, it's on the report, they know we're going mutual aid, and it does take more than 20 minutes. Like the other day, we had a brush fire all the way up this old stage road, it took them 20 minutes to get there. And we're all uphill.
Right, it's all uphill from here.
Yeah, it took a while, and people get here to the station to get going and get their equipment on, and get up there, and it took them 20 minutes. And the state wants to know why it took us 20 minutes to get to that scene. We had all uphill.
Too many red lights, slow the folks down.
So it's something new that they're trying.
Is this a step towards regionalizing
I
fire
think so.
departments?
I think so.
Bill?
I think the chances of regionalizing fire departments is, nobody here will be alive when that eventually happens. There's too much sense of territory, et cetera. So I think that less than talking about regionalization of fire departments, which can be very threatening to some people, what they're talking about is aggregating some equipment so that if you have 10 or 12 fire departments or more, all of whom say they need X number of feet of hose at a particular time, you can buy in bulk. And it's the same kind of, it's extending sort of the purchasing program for other items, but since they're so specific, then it's a separate program, and this grant fund will help implement it. So that if you're looking at hose, if you're looking at Scott packs, if you're looking at masks, instead of buying 3 or 5 or 7, if you can buy 20 or 30, you're going to get a better price on all of them. So that's part of it. So it's more aggregation than regionalization. And for instance, the departments already sort of know each other. We don't have draws of life, but we know that there are adjacent towns that do, so that we don't need to buy them. We can get them fast enough. But they're trying to formalize some of this stuff to know where equipment is, who has what, and also to be able to buy in bulk for a price reduction. As far as the reporting thing goes, this has been a political disaster with Greenfield sitting in the middle of it. There was a grant that Greenfield got for a particular dispatching software and record-keeping software, which initially was going to be given free to all the towns. Not everybody signed up to it. It finally just sort of faded away. There's, I think, 2 or 3 towns that's using it now, and there's not enough money to give it away for free. And then the state police, who were never really consulted in all of this, picked a different software for their dispatch center. And they happened to pick one that doesn't have a fire or ambulance module, because they're not fire or ambulance, they're state police, and who cares? So the fire and ambulance side are still left out without a uniform reporting system, but the one that Greenfield is pushing is not the way to go. So I don't know what else will come up, but
Well, what about reporting for our police department? Is that something that needs to be incorporated?
I think your police department is already on IMC, which is what the dispatch center is going with. I know that they were on IMC years ago, and I don't think they've changed. So they will be, they're right there already. There shouldn't have to be any changes other than, the normal upgrades. But IMC does not have fire modules or ambulance modules.
So this grant,
The grant has less to do with dispatching than it does with...
but the grant is being applied for by the Council of Governments.
Right.
And then the Council of Governments will administrate it out to the towns that sign to participate.
Correct. And what
We have no
they'll...
budget yet.
Right, and what they're looking at now is just, if not enough towns show an interest, they're not gonna apply for the grant. So what they're asking now is, would you potentially be interested in participating in this if we get it? You're not committing yourself to anything, you're just saying, you're interested in saving some money down the line, and basically right now it costs you nothing.
Dale, what's your recommendation?
I would sign it, and go with it, but like I said, we have the right to say no to what they want. But like I say, right now, that communication's very expensive. What they came up with is way over what we budget might, so.
Since there's no commitment,
Right.
except to participate in this investigation, I would be very concerned down the road, what they list here in terms of you'd have to have the software and this and that, and there's got to be staff time. The amount of money to be spent to stay in the program
That's what I'm saying,
could be costly.
we gotta be very careful. Like I said, they want $750 just to go on this program, then $150 each month. I ain't gonna pay $510 per year. It's very expensive.
But until you
But
engage,
are they figuring that they're gonna get this grant to generate the information, supposedly to get another grant to pay for some of that?
They're looking for potential interest. If it turns out to be economically feasible, you go with it. If it turns out not to be economically feasible, you don't.
You wanna read me the list of towns again that have agreed?
Buckland, New Salem, Window, Lyden, Heath, Gill, Conway, Turner's Falls, Sunderland, and Chalmers.
Some big, some small.
We have to have this in because by Friday.
I think it's a no-brainer. I really think you do it, and whether or not you commit to the program after, you've gone through this initial process, is a whole nother story. But unless you engage in it, you won't know what the savings or the additional costs are. This leverage sort of aggregate.
Is there a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we express our interest as a town for the Community Innovation Challenge Grant and endorse the application that's before us.
Second,
Any other discussion?
as long as we're clear that there is absolutely no requirement that having participated in this first grant, that you are tied to participating in the program. If there is a,
You're not even committing to participate in the first part. You're just showing an interest. I will sit down with whoever is administering this at the council and try to get some, at least myself, a better sense of exactly what is included, not included in what they're asking. I'll be able to get back to you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I gotta believe from the list of towns and knowing, the people that are administering and running the fire departments in those towns that you mentioned, we'd be in pretty good company, and it seems like if we decided not to participate, we wouldn't be the only ones not participating.
Right.
So, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Just so you know, I've been out in a number of fire and ambulance calls in the last few months. We have a very impressive department. At least
thank you.
I'm impressed. So I feel, I get sick now, it's okay.
Del, did you have anything else?
The state came today and looked at our brush truck. If I get a grant for a new brush truck, or we get rid of that truck, that has to go back to the state. It's government surplus. They claim I had a trailer that's back Doug Fields' day, back in 2002, which we gave that way back to the state. But the grader that Tom has, that I got a couple years ago, and the air compressor up there that nobody's used, that is ours to give away after 2 years. They're talking about possible getting rid of that grader once they get their new one. So the town will have the option of selling the old military grader that we like. And that air compressor, which is a 3-phase air compressor, is brand new. I gave the highway department their single phase up there, so we could never use it. But we could sell that too. The only thing that has to go back to the state is the brush truck, if we were to get rid of that.
So is that kind of what you're thinking of, is replacing that?
That's the federal grant that we're working on. I was highly recommended by the feds, who take care of New England, to go for a new brush truck. It's an 87 military pickup. It's a 24 volt, 12 volt, and get a brand new truck. We'll take a lot of equipment off that, put it on the new truck. I'm looking for something that's going to carry all my brush equipment. Right now, if we have a fire and I need my ATV, we have to send somebody back to the old highway department, hook it up to the trailer, and bring it. So we're looking to have a truck that's going to have an ATV on it and all the rest of the equipment on it for about $150,000. And the town has come up to 5%.
Do we have facilities to house something like that?
Yeah, this truck will go, it's over there, that's fine. Can't be any longer than about 22 feet. That's the one we got there. So for a Ford 550, well, extended cab, as far as a 12 or 16 foot body, and everything else to it.
Well, here's a pointed question for you. We just talked about spending a bunch of money on electrical and heat pump and so on and so forth in the fire department. 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, do we still see that facility as, for the most part, usable?
The new trucks are bigger, taller, and wider. You have to replace the tanker in there, replace engine 3. Right now, on next year's budget, we're going to replace where my first truck is and rescue the floor. The floor's all caving in there. Safety-wise, trip hazards and everything else. The other, where the big tanker is, that bay is all done, and where the brush truck, that bay was all done a few years ago. But the other 2 bays have never been done. The floor's all caving in, warped, and I don't know if it's under mine underneath there.
It's hard to know what's underneath it. What was underneath the other two? Just the drain?
Well,
Just
the other
drain?
2 had a septic system under where the big truck is. Your first one, you come in the door, that had a septic system just underneath there, and the whole floor was gone underneath there.
That was the add-on there.
Yeah. We happened to see a hole.
That was one of the few buildings on Main Street that had a septic system.
We happened to look and see a hole in the floor and look down, and there's nothing underneath it. Thank God we fixed that, replaced that floor before that new truck came in.
Probably a wooden septic tank.
No, I see something here. We tried to go for a new station a few years ago, and the feds had the grant. We were shovel ready. But somebody in politics wanted somebody else who wasn't shovel ready. They got the grant. Shovel ready means we had this water, sewer, everything. We owned the property. We were ready to go. But some politician decided he wanted his town to have it. So he got it. Wasn't even ready.
Sometimes it is drinking buddies.
We're not in as good a shape as we were last year because we've traded over for, what's his face, Neil. And So in terms of federal grant money and clout, Neil doesn't have what overhead. And also, he's not from here, he's further south. But if you're talking 10 years for a new fire station, do the electrics now. It's very embarrassing to have your fire department burned to the ground. So I mean, that question.
That wasn't my question.
Okay.
My question is, as we put investments in there, where does it go?
Yeah, but I'm saying if it ever comes up, well, let's not do it because we're going to try to get a new one in a couple of years. One, I don't think you can get one in a couple of years, and two, it needs upgrading 5 years ago. So it's a mess.
All right, you all set now?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Gray. Don't be bashful, come up front, just because everybody else has been sitting in the back.
And you will have a letter in your folder.
How are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
Here, I'm great. Any better people would wonder what I was up to.
Well, my name's Christopher Gray. I live on Farms Road. Due to some time constraints, I haven't been able to provide as much information in advance of the meeting as I would like. So I'll try to touch on as much as I can right now. I'm interested in the use of the town hall to help provide last mile internet service to the area. And I have a solution to provide improved last mile internet services in the area. It would require a location from which internet access could be attained and could then be wirelessly distributed. The town hall is currently connected to the Mass Broadband 123 network and has a steeple from which antennas and things could be used to distribute the signals wirelessly and distribute the broadband, or distribute the bandwidth. If this proposal is appropriate, I would build a scalable network to provide last mile internet service in town using wireless technology. The first effort is expected to cover a reasonably small area. And although coverage prediction is difficult, the first effort would include majority of Main Street, the south end of Baptist Corner Road, South Street, the north end of Norton Hill Road, areas around the lake, things of that nature. Once that system proves itself, upgrades would be done to extend the range as demand and income allows. Ideally into the completely unserved areas of town. And although the main area of town is served with DSL, the Verizon office is closed. We cannot purchase new service. Periodically they open it when enough people cancel service, so a couple of new people can get service. But it's my understanding they have no intention of providing more service or better service in the town. And it's my understanding through discussions with Wired West, that's the case. I would expect to provide reasonably priced services, and the intent would be to help fill the gap between now and when a full last mile build out would be possible. Sort of thing that Wired West continues to talk about, and the state grants that have been sort of in the workings over a period of time. The idea would be to fill the gap between now and when that sort of thing might actually happen. The latest reasonable estimate for the Mass Broadband 123 network being lit is in February. And I would expect, if we could work something out, that I could provide services as early as 3 weeks after that network is lit.
So what you're saying is you'd like to use the town hall as a jumping off, a base, to fire up this network that you would sell to subscribers commercially?
Yes. I'm interested in leasing space here at Town Hall. A lease that would allow for a connection to that Mass Broadband 123 network It would allow for space for networking hardware, and allow for hardware and antennas to be installed in the steeple, in or on the steeple. I would like to seek an exclusive use of unlicensed frequency, the unlicensed bands, 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 520 gigahertz, and TV white space bands. Since it's a significant challenge to have multiple people operating on unlicensed bands in the same location, that would provide the ability to have more reliable, robust services provided. In order to provide decent service, I would require access at all times for repairs and at scheduled times for upgrades. It would be possible to do it without access at all times for repairs, but the people in town would have to understand if there is some sort of problem at night, that the reason that their internet couldn't be fixed till the following day is because I would have limited time to maintenance would be done. Aesthetically, I would attempt to minimize any change to the outward appearance of the structure. Of course, there would have to be some sort of balance between aesthetics and function, but the antennas are mostly white and would be reasonably unnoticeable, even if they were installed all on the outside of the building at the top. I suspect that many of them could be installed within the railings or in places where it would not be obvious from the ground. I would provide appropriate general liability insurance coverage in doing so. And it should be noted, the service that I'm discussing and contemplating, if hypothetically, let's say, I was granted the ability to do so, and I was able to cover the entire town completely with fantastic service, that would still not remove us from the unserved list and put us on the served list of towns as they receive or do not receive broadband. Which means I would not take us out of the running for Wired West participation. I would not take us out of the running for the government grants that are currently underway, or any grant that goes through the USDA Rural Utility Service or uses their metrics. And if all this, or any of this was appropriate, I would be interested in some form of reasonable assurance that a lease agreement could be made, and if that was the case, it would allow me to proceed in creating a business entity and starting the preparations to provide service. And I would like to also note that I did serve in a limited capacity in the technology earlier this year, and it was a limited capacity because I had the interest in doing this. At the advice of the State Ethics Commission, I made sure that I removed from that committee to prevent any possible conflict of interest, real or apparent. So that's.
I have a couple of questions, I'm sure Paulette does too, because that's her line of business, but why don't you go first, Paulette, because you're more professional at that.
Well, part of what caught my interest when you said about the antennas, from what you've reviewed, how many do you anticipate going
So
at the top?
it depends. Radio frequency propagation is really hard to predict, especially in such a wooded area. So it depends a lot on empirical tests. But I would expect to cover the areas I was just discussing at first. You could hit everything with 3 antennas, probably small antennas. The largest possible antenna that would be considered, it would be about 4 feet tall and about 1 foot wide, white. They're called sector antennas. It's the kind of antenna you typically see on a cell phone tower. Such a thing could hypothetically be placed inside the windows at the very top, in which case you wouldn't actually see them. However, working through windows and with wood in the Fresnel zone does reduce your coverage. The very beginning, the first test, I'm expecting to be a 900 megahertz band with antennas about this size, 2 at first, and then 3 would help cover further down South Street, depending on how people are showing interest. I could see perhaps as many as 10 installed, but I would expect that probably wouldn't need more than 5. And at some point, you need to repeat the signal. So when you need to get to a greater distance, you need to send what they call backhaul from one location to another. So you have one larger, typically directional antenna that serves another tower and then or building or structure or anything that then repeats the signal to customers near that.
Send it to the dump so we have service in Apple Valley.
I guess a couple questions I have. One is, you're not a company yet, right, Chris? You're an individual.
I am not, that's correct.
Right. This is going to require some capital on your part, right?
So,
I mean,
Since-
repeaters and antennas and...
since the nature of the wireless network is so scaling, I could afford to do it with my own investment and upgrade service as demand required. So, for example, let's say I could set up a system that could serve 5 people, and once 5 people were served, improve, so I could serve 10 and 20, and not need to set up a system that's prepared to serve 200 and assume a very large risk.
Did you ask for exclusive use of the town hall? Did I hear that?
I'm interested in exclusive use of the unlicensed bands. There are also licensed bands, and there are multiple unlicensed bands, and I did not. I'm not requesting the use of all of them.
But you also said something like it wouldn't preclude Wired West from coming in, and didn't you say something like that also? Why would you want to do that? I mean, aren't you competing with Wired West in a sense?
In a sense, yes. I live in town. Let me put this nice. I don't want satellite. I don't want DSL. I want fiber. And I want to go out to my house. But I don't have fiber.
But you don't have what?
I don't have fiber in my house.
Okay.
I do happen to have DSL, but I would be my own customer. I would be providing service to my area eventually, and it's only a step in the right direction toward getting better than DSL and better than satellite. Fiber is still better than that. So I want fiber too. And there's a possibility that fiber will be significantly more expensive than a wireless solution, and so there would be competition, but I'd like to think that it would fill the gap and eventually a better solution would come to town. But it may end up being such that I could provide reasonable services at a lesser cost, and people who need the fiber could get the fiber when it became available.
Are there any other locations in town where this would work from, like the highway department instead of town hall?
It is particularly unlikely without having to build a tower. And town hall is, well, first of all, the highway department doesn't have a connection to the NBI network this time. The only locations in town are the fire department, town hall, the library, and Sanderson Academy. The fire department and town hall are, I'm sorry, the fire department and the library, neither are as high as the town hall, and neither would have such efficiency in being able to cover an area. And when you work with unlicensed bands, you try to operate with directional antennas as much as possible. because anybody can be using the frequencies. So the higher up you get, the more reliable your service can be without interfering with other people's unlicensed hardware.
So the school wouldn't work even though when I leave downtown, my sense is I've driven uphill when I get to Sanderson, which appears to be higher than down.
You want line of sight. You want to be able to see wherever your antenna is for ideal connections. And really, the 2.4, I was talking about 5 different bands. 3 of those bands really require line of sight. You need to see where you're getting your service from to get good service. You get fantastic throughput, but you still need to see it. From Sanderson, you can hardly see anything. 2 of the bands, one is sort of experimental at this time, so although I'm interested in the exclusive rights to use it, the hardware isn't, you can't even buy the hardware. So although you can legally use it, you can't actually use it. Ideally, sometime within this coming year, that would be possible. So the 900 megahertz and the TV white space, both are capable of non-line of sight. But the further you get from the line of sight, the lower the throughput is and the worse the signal is. So, for example, at Sanderson, you can hardly see anything. From Town Hall, in Steeple anyway, you can provide service to a lot of people, whereas from Sanderson it wouldn't be nearly as possible.
Even though it might be higher up in terms of the land.
Correct.
It doesn't have the same.
Well, a lot of this for me is just not in the realm of where I live. You know, all this information and being able to push it all around. But are there locations in town that aren't publicly owned that would work for you? Because my thought is that if we were going to discuss this as a possibility, for us to lease out space in a public building, in the town hall, that we would have to put out, we'd have to develop a set of proposals that we would want people to address and have to really bid it out, do requests for proposals and try to get a competitive type deal going on that. And I think that may or may not be a stopping point, but that's the only way I think legally that we could get into any type of lease or rental agreement using the town hall.
The examples that have been presented to me most often are those of water towers that are typically municipally owned, and they lease space on those regularly for cell antennas and for wireless internet service providers. And I don't know exactly what the procedure is in a town that does that, such that the town is looking for somebody versus somebody is looking at the town. It is technically possible to be done on private land, but in order to cover town, that would require putting up a tower. And I think some not very visible antennas on top of town hall that blend into the background would be a lot more inviting than a tower next to town hall or nearby in a high spot. Also, the finances associated with connecting into the fiber network at a location that is not already a community acre institution, which town hall is, I just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be possible. Maybe, I suppose maybe with a significant amount of capital, I could, but I would rather go back to doing my engineering than
I understand. I just feel that that's a position we would be put into unless somebody could prove it to me otherwise.
Okay. And at this time, the advice I've gotten from other service providers who have worked with other towns and things is typically an appropriate lease for a small town is in exchange for internet services. So I would be interested in providing internet services to the town hall and by extension the fire station in exchange for being able to use the connection and put some network hardware and put the antennas on people.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, right now there's $40 million sitting in the Ways and Means Committee that Kulik is trying to add $10 million to that will get passed, hopefully in this year's budget, that will go to wiring the unserved towns. The other thing is this being an anchor position, which makes it possible to hook in rather than someplace else. I believe that providers have to be certified by Axia. Have you been in touch with them to manage the system?
Yes, I've been in extensive communications with them.
And they
I am entertaining being certified by them, but you don't actually have to be. You can, this is really more of a business discussion that shouldn't.
Don't feel that you have to give up any proprietary information here.
Okay. You don't actually need to be registered with them. You can purchase through somebody who is registered too.
Okay, and the only other thing is what gives the town the authority to give exclusive use of any frequency other than thought that was sort of the FCC?
It's the exclusive use of antennas transmitting on that frequency. Any hardware can use that frequency, but if a person is the only person allowed to use that hardware at a specific location.
But somebody else could use it, let's say, from the library?
Yes. Or the fire station or any other location.
Did you talk with your proposal to the folks on the IT committee?
No. I'm
Formally?
not formal. Informally, I discussed it with. Well, at the very beginning, I told them that this is something I'm interested in doing, and that's why I had to operate in a limited
The
fashion.
only reason I'm asking is that I would be interested in their feedback on it.
Okay. Yeah, not to the extent that I've just discussed it with you.
So I would encourage you to do that.
Okay.
Nina?
Don't towns all the time rent out their steeples for phone companies, internet companies? I hear of it all the time.
I'm not sure what method is they use.
Yeah, I don't know what it
to
is
decide
either.
that.
Yeah. Do they go out for bid, or does a company come to them and say, we want to do this? Yeah.
It's more usual for churches to do that than the towns.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not saying that it's not possible, I'm just saying I'm sure there's hoops that have to be driven through to do that.
What I like is a young enterprising person from the town looking to do business with the town. We're always trying to promote that sort of thing. So I like what you come before us with. I don't know how to get to the end of it legally. I mean, this is kind of a unique situation. I also know that there's a need. I'm way out in the boondocks of town. I probably won't even have line of sight to the steeple up there. Some concerns are aesthetics. I can tell you that we're going to run into that. But I've been up there, and there are all sorts of horns and bells and stuff that you don't see from street level. So if it was tastefully done around the inside of a banister or something like that, if it worked, I mean, who knows? I mean, I know you can see forever up there. I've been there. But there are some questions, too. And I think that that's something to be considered. I'm interested in knowing where this can go and how far it can go, and it's interesting.
More information is needed, and I like the idea of getting some information back from the Technology Committee, I think they're calling themselves, given what you've proposed here.
Yeah, I'm not throwing cold water, I'm just telling you there's some hoops that I'm not exactly sure how high or wide they are.
Okay.
Good. Why don't you get together with IT and see
Okay.
the technology committee and make a proposal to them, and then when we get some feedback from them, you know, maybe even in the meantime, we'll have some time to research if it's possible and what can be done.
Okay.
Should only be a few telephone calls, maybe.
Is that something that I should attempt to do myself as well? See if I can source a town that might have a good.
That'd be fine.
Okay. And should I or is it appropriate to communicate with any of you or all of you regarding finding such a town?
Well, why don't you communicate with Mary, and then she can
Okay.
get us. All right?
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, if you want to do it, select your email address, we'll all get it.
I don't care.
That works too. Then there isn't.
Chris,
Keep forwarding.
if you wanted to email, you could go on the website and email Mary, and then pick up that select board, and it'll go to all three of us.
Okay.
Selectboard@ashfield.org.
Should I do that?
That'd be fine.
And it includes Mary too.
You can't engage us in deliberation, but you can send us stuff
Just send us
without looking for
information.
responses. Whereas Mary, you can get.
Right, so if it's back and forth, we'll do it directly, but if it's general.
Thank you.
She may even, you may send her something and she'll email back thanks or something, where
We'll just read it.
I would think that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. All right. Well, that got us through the appointments portion. Old business. Where are we on personnel policies?
You are this evening about to receive your finding. There is one for each of us.
Isn't that amazing that I thought of it and then
And
it
there
appears?
Yes, there is.
Great minds must run on the same channel.
Needless to say, there has been a lot of time and effort, but as liaison to the personnel board, what we were hoping is that the select board would go through the new manual, and if there are any changes that we feel we want included or edited or whatever, that we would bring them back to the personnel board. The master copy would be updated, and we would email the master copy to, we'd have to decide whether we wanted to go to the town council or top of the page or some other entity that does a lot with human resources to review it and come back to us with any required changes. Basically, it is not that we rewrote it and changed everything. It is reorganized. It's been edited many times, and the old policy manual is at the end, if you wanted to compare it to the 2008 version, for any reason.
Okay.
There was a last-minute issue with the appendices, and you'll see there's a cross-out, but we didn't want to hold it up just to make the proper change to that and have it error-free, but we've made notations already that that has to be fixed.
Oh, changing it from appendix G
Yeah,
to
there's a couple of them
appendix
that got out of order. And we didn't, that was the only part that we saw that needed to be adjusted. We didn't want to hold it up any longer for that. And there's a covered letter drawing your attention to a few things that were included to see if the board agrees, if they like that idea, or if they don't. And so basically, it's not rewording, it's just taking what was original, but making sure any Small Necessities Act and a whole bunch of things, that everything's covered. And any of the new documents we did when we made up the new timesheets, and there were all kinds of new forms to incorporate everything into it. And it's printed double-sided, but the idea would be the final version would be not double-sided, so you could replace pages and give each employee a copy in a binder.
Is there a copy for the meeting?
No, there's just the 3 copies for the select board so that they can review it and come back, because we're trying not to have copies out that somebody picks up and thinks are real, because it's a draft. But there is a copy of this to be put in there.
So we
That
can
these were made for.
so we can add it to the document list.
Right, yeah, add it to the document list. Maybe it would be possible to cite it that the original that these were made from is personnel board, yes. It is probably out of there at this moment, as we were marking it up, we'll be back next meeting, and go back on the board.
Well, at first I
Because we
think
had
it
to
looks
take it out
pretty
to
detailed,
take it
but I
out.
look at the old one and it's much smaller print.
And we have something wrong with that copy machine in there. We did use it for a couple of pages.
Which one?
The one where Lynn sits, puts a line down everything.
Oh, sometimes sometimes you get a mark.
It wasn't
It
on
wasn't
ours.
showing before.
It's consistently on every page, right down the middle.
Now,
Black line.
This isn't what Ricky made, because I came and said I'd make copies on a
No,
machine.
it's that copy machine right in there. And we needed a few extra copies, and I just noticed it, it put a line down everything.
Well, maybe we'll,
I'll put a
So,
note on.
yeah, somebody just, not a big deal. For us, it was okay.
only about 10 weeks, we'll start the budget process. Maybe if we have to replace the copy, we can talk about it then.
Maybe
But-
just need to listen.
Maybe. So, in May, certainly the first half of June, we talked about the policy and procedures manual.
Right.
And having to have that in place before we did the employee reviews. At least that was the
Right.
understanding that I had.
So the.
And we, you know, it's always great to set goals, doesn't mean you always reach them. We talked about November being the big month to do employee reviews and that sort of thing, so we're gonna miss that. My guess is that we're probably gonna miss that mark by about 8 or 10 months, because we're just not gonna get to it when we're working on a budget and everything else by the time we get through this. But can we amongst us set a date to which we can come back and say that we've gone over this and made notes?
There's another option, and that is if you wanted to take this as it is, because it's had a lot of work, and send it out for legal review first and come back, so that what you get back, unless there is something the town doesn't want in there, you know that's already been vetted, because you get us involved, and then we think we've got it final, and it goes to an attorney, and it comes back and it changes one more time, and comes back to us one more time.
I would think,
But I like that too.
I would personally think we'd go over it just to see if there's something that we just generally don't agree with, or.
And there were a few
And
things.
there could be things in there that I would say, well, geez, I don't agree with that, but you know what, it's federal law anyway, so, you know. Right.
No, I was
Those
just
deals,
giving you an option, if you wanted to turn it around,
if we wanted to turn it around faster, possibly.
depending, right.
But I know that there were also, when it was set up originally, there were some things in the current personnel policies that needed clarification because they could be read a couple of different ways and it was creating some issues. So we want to make sure, probably before it went to town council, that answered those questions or brought some clarity.
Yes, and there was a lot of editing just in terms of proper English to make corrections of that kind and improve it.
Why was it being spelled in text
No,
top or what?
we happened to have a member of the personnel board in a prior time in her life was an editor.
Oh, there you go.
And so she would not let us.
Well, that's fine, that's great, right?
So we benefited from her skills.
What do you think, Ron?
I think it's good. I think I'm looking forward to reviewing it. Thank you. Thank the personnel board for having done this. The one thing off the top of my mind, Paulette, I know we used to have at work a written manual like this with forms and stuff, but it became a problem to administer because people had wrong versions, and so what we ended up doing is going to an electronic place on our website internally, you know, not one that the general public can see, obviously. And all the forms were in one place, and the personnel manual was in another. And anytime there was a change, an email went out with receipt read that that it has been updated, and it was really easier to administer. So I'm going to be looking at that with, I know we probably don't have the ability to do that because we just have the town website, but it's kind of a neat idea to think about.
But I was actually thinking that once it was completed, we would put it up on the town website. I think maybe separating, like you said, maybe the appendices from the manual itself, because there's nothing specific in here that mentions any people, and having it on the website would be ideal in my world, but people like to have their own printed copy, so we thought we'd start
They
with
could
that.
print it out if you had it, if the wording in the document was that the original will always be posted to the website.
Right.
And you can feel free to get another copy, but it's your responsibility to look at we had those little issues, but I think this is great. That's a minor thing. I think we just have to get through it.
On the web.
What's that?
We did want to have it ultimately on the web. We weren't thinking of securing it because it's just Ashfield's version. We looked at other versions in other places.
That could be a resource for another community.
Sure.
I like the format of it too. It's very readable. I like the fact that it says approved by the select board down here, and you know that. I think it's great. I really do. Somewhere there should be a version number on it, you know, but that's. I think that's not perfect. I'd like to see us. This is a lot to do in one meeting, obviously. So I'd like to know how we're going to get back to the personnel board on this. I recommend bite-sized chunks of it. You know, say let's go through chapter 1 through 3 by this date. I'm not saying we do that tonight. We've got a lot on our agenda, but we schedule them for future meetings. It's going to take a little time.
I agree, and I'm just flipping through the calendar here. I mean, our next meeting is December 2nd.
Yeah.
And then, after December 2nd, I mean, we'll be here for meetings, but I think pretty much the entire world is a blur at that point.
Until
parties and things, until after the first of the year. So our last, Monday the 30th. So I mean, it's not New Year's Eve, but it may as well be.
Yeah.
With New Year's being in the holidays being in the middle of so the 13th. How much do you think we'd be prepared to discuss on the 13th of January?
Were you entertaining doing anything with it on the 30th of December, or were you bypassing that?
I just don't. It's up to the board. We could do some, I just think the whole world is pretty much a blur to me. The last 3 or 4 days of the year are, for me being that doesn't mean I'm gonna miss the 30th, it's just that you wouldn't think it would be kind of the busiest week in my life, but end of the year is pretty busy.
Can I make a recommendation? I'm just going through this for the first time, that we wait till next time to talk about ideas, because some of them might just be boilerplate, and, you know, we can push through half of it in one meeting, but it might be that I feel we need 5 meetings to get through it, but I have no idea without starting to look through this on my own.
And given the amount of time we worked on it, some of it was taking stuff from the old one and just reorganizing it.
Yeah.
Bits and pieces seem to be in different areas, and so it's.
So do we want to say that
It's not
December
that
2nd, that we'll put this,
We'll come up with a tentative schedule.
We'll leave a half hour, 45 minutes in the schedule to set up a schedule
Yeah.
to,
I think so.
I mean, if
That'd be
we
great.
take some time, we may actually be able to say, we may be able to identify the sections that nobody has an issue with.
It's basically 45 pages, plus the appendices that show different forms and reference that kind of material. And the text is pretty much confined. Some areas might be tougher, some pages, the introduction, and a few others might go more quickly.
I think it's good. Yeah.
Cover letter's pretty easy to read, so doing good there.
So
All right,
we
so
can
that's
hold
what
on
we'll
to
put
these.
that, these are ours.
I'm
These
sorry.
are our copies, so we can
Those are
write
your
them
copies.
and
We each
stuff
have
like that.
And,
Okay.
is there a copy here in town hall?
The copy is out of the drawer because it went out to make the copies. So it will be coming back into the drawer. We took it
Into
out
the
to
what?
make the copies. The personnel drawer, that's where the copy would be.
What we
And
want,
I'll just,
we want,
it's not in my possession, so I'll call and have it.
But we need a copy for,
The original of this.
we need
yeah.
a copy for the document list.
Right.
Yeah.
for the meeting folder or something, right?
Right, to reference, I think, where it is as a, if you get too many of these.
Well, you can put draft on it, or it says draft.
Yeah, it won't, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. But it would give, for example, treasurer a chance to look at it because she has to apply some of the things, so there might be questions to feed
Sure.
into the select board or something.
Sure.
And eventually, I was looking at the grievance in here, procedure. Eventually, we're gonna want some of the department heads to respond to this, like, get their opinion, like, I'm thinking the highway department, you know, they might, I don't know what they would say, but it'd just be a respectful thing to do, because, I don't know, you know, it just seems like the right thing to do, get some of the management of the town involved with it.
And
Not now, but
Yep.
eventually.
And there were things in the old one, if you were looking for, like, where did that come from? In many cases, this is reorganization, not new text. I mean, nobody's decided,
No, I
oh,
understand.
we're going to change the benefits to this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So it's consistent with what had been before.
Yeah, good.
So even for Laura, other than I know that there was a number for contribution 65%, other than that, it hasn't changed her benefits and everything that she does. Unless she sees something that she thought of.
Well, I remember when we came to the personal meeting, there was the question about how to interpret some of the applications of partial benefit awards and so forth.
That's great. Good.
So that will be back in the drawer, Mary. I just got to make the call and have it put back now that we've got the copies. Some assembly was required before the meeting.
Yeah, I imagine.
You have the bylaws in here too.
So you took it, with the copiers here couldn't handle this, or you took it to somebody to correlate these? Did you hire, is that how that worked?
There was a combination, and we didn't want every page with a line on it. So we just had it
Good. All right, so we'll put that on the agenda.
For the second.
Good. Thank you very much. Will you be meeting this week with the,
We don't meet this week.
well, email them or do whatever, but I think he's very thankful that they went
Yeah.
through all that work.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very appreciative.
It was sort of a surprise how much
Probably end up coming
more
back.
time it took. And if you want any of the personnel board to come when you're gonna cover any topics, like, why is it written that way? What did you do? We'll just need to give them an advance warning to come to a meeting.
Or you can come to one of those.
You could do that.
We post it.
Yep.
All right. New business, Hampshire Power bid invitation. You have that or it's in our folder?
No, it's not in your folder. We'll pass these over to you, and I'm not, I had hoped I'd have time to call and ask some questions. I'm not sure that I understand. They seem to be, are they all the same, or they might just be separate emails addressing the same?
I think that one I just passed out is the same. That's the
Okay.
same. This one says, please see the attached letter regarding the electricity service account from the Hampshire Council of Governments. The profit share program is being eliminated this December. However, we have two great alternative programs, one offering you a fixed price, the other a variable plan for those who have more appetite for risk. Please call me at any time for clarification.
And I'm sorry, I don't have more information
Well, this
on it.
This says at the bottom, we'll be sending out a new contract for the fixed price program for your review in the next couple of weeks.
I haven't received that.
Okay.
And that's what we have currently, right? A fixed price contract?
No, we had a profit sharing program.
There's the profit.
Well, this one says, as you know, the profit share program will come to an end
Right.
with the December. Is it the same one you
No,
get?
this is a little bit different letter than the two you have,
Oh.
but it's very brief. I just read you pretty much the whole thing. See, I think the profit share program was a fixed price, and then if they did a good job buying it on the spot market during the year, that those extra monies they sent back to you.
But they don't anticipate. It sounds like they're anticipating a rough energy.
This fixed price on this one says you need to let them know by November
The
22nd.
I mean, that's a couple days away.
Hampshire Power is proud to announce our new and highly competitive fixed price product. We are compiling a group of customers to take to the market in December, but we haven't got a contract,
No, we haven't.
so we get that they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, they know us well enough after doing the solar deal that they know that we're not fast actors. Remember, if you have a larger pool of interest, they're likely to get a better deal.
Yeah, they want to include us in a fixed price group bid and lock into a known price for the duration of the contract. But you must let us know. Sounds like something we need to know more about in short order.
Can you contact them tomorrow and tell them that? Then you can email us. If
Okay.
they have more details, you can email us that
Okay.
information.
Yep.
And if it's something that seems, no, I got a copy here. If there's something that seems real urgent, you know, maybe we could post a meeting if it ends up being urgent. We don't want the lights to go off. I'm sure they won't.
No, they won't.
So this says if you don't like the price we achieve, you do not have to sign a contract to buy electricity at that price. So where are we buying electricity from if you don't remember?
It sounds like the thing we're talking about with the fire department. It's, we're trying to pull together interested parties to see if they can get a little bit of a bid leverage.
Right.
So I don't think it's necessarily a commitment. And I would say if it's not necessarily a commitment, just do
Just
it.
say go ahead and,
Yeah, that'd be my recommendation. Because I'd hate to miss the opportunity. If we don't respond, then we might not.
What they want to do is they want to make sure the pool is as large as they can attract.
Yeah. You do not have to sign a contract to buy electricity at that price.
So the water's been fine, so when we agree that we'd like to stay in the pool.
I think so.
Okay? All right. That's easy.
and so barring anything unusual, I'll simply tell them to go ahead and put this in the.
Yeah.
We've got to approve a holiday schedule.
Yeah, we do it once a year.
Can I ask a question? Instead of having, going back to this digging the drawer to find out, would it be easier if there was a fourth binder marked wrap like this that could be just on the shelf for reference, so it's, instead of,
That way people could,
You've read it several times. You really don't need to take another one home, do you?
not really, I can print another copy tomorrow
that'd be great.
if I had to, you know.
It's a great idea.
But if you want, we could do that, and then that could be the reference point.
Absolutely.
That's
wanna do
great.
that?
Idea. Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
because I've got,
You should,
yeah, I've got all of it.
and if you don't, I'm here tomorrow, the next day, tell me about
Sure.
make copies on the one that doesn't have a line.
It's just the draft, it says draft on the front, so it's the same as theirs.
13 paid holidays. Holy cow. How many extra?
Are these
people do
paid
we have to
holidays?
hire?
Are these paid?
It's the holiday schedule.
Oh, let me grab that for you, Mary.
And
I
actually,
can see if the book agrees.
this is from the personnel book.
The current one, 2008 version.
And here's another one, and hey, look, take a look at
I'll look at that section.
drafts.
All up there. How about that? We get that one checked off.
Up to 13 paid.
I don't know how long this has been the case.
All right, so New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, and President's Day. So do we pay the highway crew if they're plowing snow? Do we pay them a holiday day plus their time?
We do, and that's one
A
of
time and
the,
a half?
that's one of the reasons the select board signs off on it, so that the dates are set. I believe that is the case. I don't think it applies to anyone else in town. I mean, I know it doesn't apply to anyone else in town.
So, my understanding of payroll is that if you pay them, right, you don't pay overtime until you have 40 hours worked.
Right. That's my understanding too. You have to work
You have to
40
work.
hours in the week for
If
overtime.
you've got a holiday pay in the middle, that doesn't count as 8 hours worked.
Well, I don't know.
Sometimes it's in excess of 8 hours of your normal workday. I mean, if you took 4 days vacation and then you did 1 day where you worked 12 hours, you're probably not getting that 4 hours.
No, but if you worked Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday was a holiday, but you had to come in and plow snow that day,
And then,
that 8 hours, I'm not sure if that's time and a half.
But if you work Thursday and Friday, then it would be time and a half.
I believe that's right.
When you get over 40
When
hours
you get over
worked.
40, right.
But working,
It's always a contention.
a holiday, you're supposed to get paid for the holiday.
So
So,
you get paid for the holiday.
oh, okay.
That's straight time,
And the other's time
the
and a
way I
half.
understand it.
Time and a half,
I guess we'll get to that when we get to the.
I'm hoping it's in there, if not, it will need to be.
And did it look the same?
Yeah, yes it did.
Patriots Day.
So these are the same 13 days that are in the old handbook, the 2008 one I just looked at. And
Yes.
all we're doing is formally agreeing on the dates.
Right, when they're actually occurring.
Right.
Because if they fell on a Sunday, then you wouldn't get paid for it. Like if Christmas was on a Sunday, you shouldn't get paid for it.
If you're working it, you do.
Oh, if you're working it, yeah.
Usually they move it to the next day,
Yeah.
so you get Monday off,
I see.
depending which way it goes.
Yeah, these are all on non-weekend.
Yeah, they're all midweek this year. And Monday.
Gross national product's gonna shrink like you wouldn't believe this year, right? With all these holidays being square in the middle of the week. Can't get over, Sandy was saying that school, last day of school is Friday before Christmas.
Oh, they've got Monday and
Poor
Tuesday.
parents.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, New Year's, and so they don't go back until the 2nd, so poor parents. Poor grandparents. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept it as presented, the 2014 paid holiday schedule, get it on the table.
Second?
Any other discussion? When all these holidays are, we budgeted for all of these. That was incorporated in our discussion. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous. FERCog, invitation to bid on human resources consultant.
I can pass this over to you, but they're interested in putting out bids to get some human resource services that various towns can share for specific projects.
This is from Bob Dean. Oh, you've got the letter in front of you.
Actually, Don, if you want to pass,
What?
you have the one in your folder, you want to pass that one back to me? Do you have the same?
Do you've had time to read through this, have you got a recommendation, Mary?
Well, for example, I mean, I know, I know there was a discussion last year about the finance committee working on looking at pay equity issues, for example. They're also available to do employee evaluations of the processes. I don't know. I mean, a lot of these things are things that we might be in the process of doing for ourselves. I'm not clear on how much use I would make of the consultant, but
But there's not an extra charge for this. This is part of what we're already enlisted in, right?
I believe so.
Well, there is a paragraph at the end that says, I realize that you probably don't have an appropriation.
For funding, right, that's right.
On this project.
So,
The RFP requires prices that are good for 60 days to give you time to find funding. It would be helpful to me to let you know appropriation. So I
so
think,
we would just be involved at this point in the RFP process. Again, it wouldn't be an obligation to go once prices were available.
It seems to be the understanding of the personnel board that either this select board, with conjunction with the finance committee, have given the board a charge to start trying to find out some information in terms of pay for employees of the town. When we voted in May, the finance committee wanted to look to see if everybody was equitable, so to speak. So we started down that road. We can stop if the preference is to do this. But we thought we were supposed to have something ready for budget season to work all this stuff.
I mean, I can't imagine, I won't say I shouldn't say definitely, but I can't imagine.
So they're trying to more formally gather some of the same information that we're working on gathering as well. And if they were comparing, I mean, what's the difficult part in all of this is you can get the cost per hour. It's the job descriptions and the understanding, because it depends what the content of the job description is as opposed to title. So even some people with the same title aren't doing the same thing necessarily. Should be close, but
Well, you can't tell from time to time.
right? No, exactly. So this will take them a while.
I've read through this before the meeting. I came in and looked through my folder, and I think it's a good idea, even to do it as something. This might take a lot longer than the personnel board would, but the nice thing about it is it would be done by a professional, someone who makes a living at doing these things. Not that our volunteers aren't qualified on a lot of matters, but it would also tie together all the neighboring towns, which has a benefit. You know, it kind of gets us talking the same language and so on and so forth. There is some work to do on this. They want to know positions and, you know, there's a response, but we're not obligated to have to do this by expressing our interest, from what I understand. Because this bid will come back and it'll be, I don't know, $40,000, and there'll be 10 towns, it'll be $4,000, or maybe it's half that. And I think it could be valuable information to have, even if it was supplied digitally. We decided not to use it, give the digital version to our personnel board and say, have a ball with it to the extent that they want to. But it would be good to know. I never turn this sort of information down. It's good to have in your back pocket.
Yeah,
So I'd say
I'm actually thinking instead of the personnel, you know, I mean, it would be valuable for this comparisons and so forth. There's always a question with the finance committee and when we're going through the budget process.
Yeah. Right.
Or if there comes a time you gotta fill a position, you know, you kind of have to have an idea where to
But
start.
this is only going to come back with, and it will cost you X amount of dollars for us to do this project.
Right.
And that's what they're defining here.
Right.
So the first go around, you're just going to find what the cost is.
Right.
Then they have to execute and do all this for all
Right.
the towns. Yeah,
Right.
if the price was,
If we decided we wanted
Reasonable
to do
number.
it. Yeah.
yeah. I know they put out some information, because we've referenced that already.
Costs.
HCOG and FERCOG.
Yeah.
and- But
Salary
this looks like it
reductions.
would be more extensive in terms of really comparing
Right,
apples
we
to apples.
just updated the
Or just
wage and
oranges.
salary
Right.
survey.
And it's descriptions too.
Yeah.
So maybe this could come back and we could say, if we decided we want to do it, here, personnel board, tell us what you think of this as it came back, and,
I mean, they're gonna put a lot of time and effort into digging this out and comparing. I would think somebody's gonna
sure.
put some time and effort to compare job descriptions, and somehow you have to assign points or something to be able to make some kind of evaluation or check the boxes or
Yeah.
something. Because you can't go by titles.
I think they say that the consultant, even, I can't recall exactly, but will meet with the towns, you know, and understand the various positions, because I'm sure there are a lot of positions that are similar, but not exactly the same. And, but this does require, Mary, that you respond with the positions, you know, it's like that salary review that they did, where they had 10 different town positions. That way we would know what is a laborer on the highway department, what's a job description for
Right,
that
and I
person.
just filled that out for the town a couple of weeks ago, and so on that one, because it's a rough cut of those things,
Yeah.
it can be hard to figure out exactly what position you're talking about. Labor 1, 2, 3, that sort of thing.
So for this, we don't have to give them anything.
What's that?
Except, well, no, we have to give them
No, I mean, we
information.
don't have to give them the detailed information, job descriptions and all this. This is just an RFP.
Not at this stage.
No, on his
At
cover
this
sheet, on his cover sheet, he says, attaches a draft RFP on page 8, attachment A, on which I need you to do the following. So he needs us to fill in a list of employee positions to be included in the study, because he hasn't completed the
Right,
RFP.
but he doesn't need each individual employee description.
No, just the titles.
They just want to know
Job
how many
description.
people.
Right.
They need to know the extent of how many people are there.
Right, and then he says, provide the date of the last study completed for your town. We might then have
Hey, we get this
that.
filled out and send it back to him, he wants it next week.
Now, even though the sewer functions separately, wouldn't we want to include them in this? Because other towns have, I mean, I'd want to include everybody, you know, that's an employee,
Makes sense.
people from the library. I think we should,
I think
besides the police, I think we need to
anybody who
include
comes
the fire department.
into our purview as we do budget or go to annual town meeting.
Right. I wasn't thinking of the stipend kind of things
No.
that we get, but I was thinking
Yeah.
the fire department, I would love to see some comparisons coming up on that kind of information.
All right.
So I'll make a motion that do you want a motion or no?
Yeah, what makes the
Okay.
motion?
I'll make a motion that we pursue this with FERCog, and the subject relates to a regional HR consultant, procurement of a regional HR consultant relative to this RFP.
Second?
All right. The only thing I have to add that you've probably heard me say before is that with all these studies and so forth, is we want to look at what everybody else does. And I think a lot of times people, not routinely, but people get looking at what everybody else does and think that they're making a mistake how they run their own boat. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, this is, anytime we generate this kind of information, I just think it's information, but it doesn't necessarily steer how we're gonna, or should run our own business.
Totally agree. It's just information.
Each town has different demands on the dollars they have.
Yep.
You know, like the demand on us for the school system versus Buckland, that it costs us more.
I mean, I think at a certain level, people love generating this information, and then that somebody says, well, we're not quite at, especially on pay scales, we're not at average. Well, you know, if you do a study every year and everybody's trying to bring up the bottom, all of a sudden the average starts escalating so high that nobody can be average because the pay scales are just, you know, it's amazing that some union hasn't said we need to do a survey every 6 months, so then it even escalates even faster. But that's my 2 cents on that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thanks, Mary. Oh, Ron Kohler.
Ron Kohler.
you sent mail.
Oh, we're under liaison reports, I guess I could just give a quick,
Yeah, it was the next thing in my folder
okay.
about what Donnie sent you.
Basically, you guys can read, I wanted you to get it as soon as I got it, and I've been pushing Donna, believe me, for this. But this basically says she thinks we have an obligation. Because remember, that was a
I
one thing
read through the whole
Good.
thing, and it just...
reinforced.
It reinforced what I thought was obvious, but you need to have it.
You do, you need it in a file somewhere before we go out to bid to cut trees on that back retention wall and, you know, the liability associated with it and everything. So it was good to get. And she's working on the Ashfield Lake stuff this week, she told me, so more will come. But I just wanted you to have that. And
So what's our next step, now that we have that?
I have called Alden Gray a second time. If you recall, I gave him a copy of the engineer proposal, which is about $18,000 to do the pre-analysis, to come up with different options for the wall, either back this way, and included geotechnical and survey and a whole bunch of things. And our portion of that wall, you know, in a rough sense, is 33% of the entire wall, going from one end to another. So our exposure is like $6,000 of the 18. And Alden, I won't speak for him, but I think he's inclined to want to address the situation sooner than later. He doesn't want the wall to tip over because he's got some leaning on his end of the wall. But he's got to impress upon the trustees, and he's got to find funding. So he didn't say anything to discourage me from the fact that they would do that. I think this is important stuff to get on the table now, just before budget season. I want to get the Ashfield Lake proposal going too, which should be next meeting. Hopefully I'll have something for you on that. But, you know, I'm waiting to hear back from the trustees.
Now, with the engineering, does that fall under professional services that you don't have to put that out to bid?
It does. But the tree work will probably have to go out to bid, you know, if you have someone go out there and cut trees off that wall, and rubber trees hanging out of it and stuff, some big ones.
Do we turn that over to the tree warden?
But he would sub it out.
Yeah, you can sub it out.
I was just thinking,
I mean, the tree warden,
We've upped his budget.
my interpretation is what we upped his budget was
It's
to
not enough still.
take care of trees
other trees.
on the
The mains.
roadways
Yeah.
that would be a problem.
And there's so many of them.
And there's so many of them, so this really,
Is
I
outside.
think, is outside of that. I mean, maybe you want Tom to watch over it, but I think you'd probably just do a good job.
Yeah. That'd be a good idea, actually,
Because we
because
get
part
a
of it is a road, right?
Right.
We gotta, yeah.
No, but I mean,
The
for the
budget-
trees, we'd have to have the dam project for tree removal instead of tree warden.
Right, tap that account.
Right.
So I was thinking, perhaps if we were so inclined, now that we have this, you could talk to Tom as the liaison and say, what would it cost us? So I know we're carrying a number forward for the wall, and maybe it's the same $15,000 again, but maybe we want to up it by the tree amount also, right? I don't know, I'm just throwing out options. And if he had a response from someone saying to cut the trees along the town portion of that, you know, the first 500 feet would cost this many bucks. It'd be good to have that number going into the budget season.
Is that a budget note?
Yeah, well, I'll talk to Tom about it so he can start thinking about it. Nothing wrong with putting.
And just from a cost point of view, I don't think we're talking about the big maples that are 15, 20 feet off the wall. I think we're talking more about what's coming out of the wall. You know what I mean? There's a couple real nice shade trees there. They cost a lot of money to take down.
And if they're not causing a problem, or it's not going to kill them if work is done to the wall.
Right.
Well, and Tom was, he's aware because he was there that day with us.
Yes, it was.
Okay, anything else?
Along that line, just that I expect to hear back from her on easements and a few other things along the line. She was going to be preparing a article and so on and so forth for a special town meeting for the,
To take these,
right, and then we would
or
also
accept these.
accept the easement, right? And then we're also talking about getting a proposal from the engineers for doing engineering design. I want to know what that number is. If you recall, one of the grants we went after was I think a hazard mitigation grant for levees and dams, and the only people they were giving money to were shovel-ready projects, and that means you've gone through design. So I want to know what would it cost us to go through design? So I'm waiting to hear back from the engineer on that. When I get it, I'll bring it.
Thanks, Ron,
Yep.
for the information.
Yeah, any other liaison?
No, not at this time.
We've seen, we did the personnel deal, and Dell came and told us what's going on. Tom, we've gone over that, so we're waiting to hear on the grader, when that's should be delivered. And I think that's great that we made that decision today on how to finance it. That should be a really automatic thing, except for us signing the note in the book when it comes time. I do not believe that I have any conflict of interest, but I want to mention it, is that the farm that my son is renting, there's a culvert there that is collapsed, and so I told Tom about it, and I said probably before it really turns into a mess with stuff not flowing where it should, that they might want to get that. And Tom was looking into it, and I said, I hope this isn't a conflict of interest. And Tom says, it's no conflict of interest, I'll take care of it. And I said, well, I'll just mention it, that it's on that Campbell Road that goes straight out from Walden Farms, that goes
Right
over to the woods.
Yep.
So it's not a road that's used a lot, and it's a shame that in the winter, that road's not even plowed,
But it's a culvert that normally tend to,
it's
if there is an issue with
It's
it.
a culvert across the road, and it says, we haven't done anything on that road for 2 years. I said, no kidding. And so he was gonna get up there and take care of it, but I just thought I'd mention it to you, so that was one of the things that maybe Tom was looking at, so. All right, that should take care of us for liaison reports. Mail.
Mail, lots of mail. Let's see, the first one is there's a letter from Judy Haupt about requesting that the board write a letter about Rico moving the office in Greenfield.
And didn't I see an article in the Greenfield paper that said the Greenfield Communities Committee or Community Planning Committee or something, they were having a hearing on that also this
I
week?
didn't see that.
Well,
So here's the
Is that
list.
This is similar to when Joanne came questioning the same thing, right?
Yeah. So,
And Dell didn't mention it tonight, but he had mentioned to me that there was a request for fire chiefs, and I don't know if he was ready for that.
To not have them move.
well, here's the letter from Judy. Enclosed is the recent article from Western Mass Electric Company employees asking for your support in keeping local services local. Having the service center move to the valley makes our sense of service makes no service sense at us in the hills. Will you, in your official capacities, write a letter of complaint? Thank you, Judy. What's the sense of the board?
What I said back before when this subject was brought up is I don't know any of the information behind their decision. Logistically speaking, ability to service, or anything. Someone did a calculation somewhere and said, for financial reasons and serviceability reasons, there's too much redundancy in the system. I don't know what they said, but here's where we're going to go. I can't criticize them because I don't know what they did, and I don't know that we won't be serviced equally as well. So I'm a little leery about sending letters of support when I don't have the information. If I had the knowledge that their response time was going to be 15 minutes slower or a day slower, I'd feel differently, but I need knowledge before I can endorse a letter like that. No one has come out and said that. I mean, a lot of people have speculated. That's what I have to say.
One would think they're doing it because they're trying to control costs, and it must have something to do with the building. Because if your people are traveling further distance and using more gas, if you're closing down a building, you're trying to eliminate some kind of expense. And yet not incur more with transportation. But like you said, we don't know what the bits and pieces are. It just, intuitively, everybody's feeling like service will be less if they're further away and if their employees take that much longer. If you live in Greenfield and you gotta go to Hatfield or wherever it is they're going, it's gonna take more time to even get to your job, let alone get out to where the problem is.
If we were to write a letter, I would hope it would be something that would say that we hope you have considered all these options. We trust that serviceability would not be diminished at all. And CC the Department of Public Utilities at the same time. Why just send it to them? CC DPU, because in a year, if they're falling short of their responsibilities, you can say, we told you, the Public Department of Public Utilities. So I wouldn't want to accuse them of anything. I would just say that we trust that you've considered all of these concerns,
I think if you were to take some action on that, where Judy calls it a letter of complaint, I think just a letter of concern.
Yeah. I could consider
Saying that we've got, that we have
concerns.
citizens that are concerned, and, we hope that you, very much like what you, if you want to put them
so worried, guys. I really.
but with this thing, I would think that would be very fair.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a sense of what Ron was just talking
Yes,
about.
and I see
Is that would be a very fair approach.
And we trust you considered issues of, et cetera.
Yeah.
Sounds like she's.
And my bet is that they've got a form letter already to come back to you and say, well, this is.
We've considered it, and we won't sacrifice anything, But CC the DPU.
One of the, when I look at it, if I were in their shoes running that business, their main concern is to keep meters turning.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make any money when the meters aren't turning.
They get little penalties too.
And we're probably concerned in the hills because depending how big the outage is, we know they're trying to service as quickly as possible and get most people up when you're up in the hill towns.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're the
we got
last
100 out, but they got 10,000 out in the valley. Get out first.
Going through a few instances that our emergency management director has commented a number of times that we get service back before people who are with other providers in the area do.
Oh, that's good.
It's pretty good record.
That ice storm, they were very good when they find, people that came to my house, is that they were from Baltimore or something. I mean, they really, there were some.
Right, and they do, they come from very far away to get to an event.
It's amazing to me that Hadley is the valley that Greenfield is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how's that work?
It is.
And it is the valley.
Greenfield's the valley. Greenfield's the valley just as much as Hadley is.
Mm-hmm. So why is it?
They may not be quite as happy, but it's a valley. Well, I don't know, from my house, for me to get to the Rotary in Greenfield and to get to
About the
Little
same.
Park is about 3 minutes difference, so.
Where are they located?
In Hadley?
Yeah.
In Hadley, they're right across the Coolidge Bridge.
Yeah.
They're right there. You get across the Coolidge Bridge,
A little further down there.
right, you can access them right off of Bay Road. Yeah, they got a big facility there.
So is that a go?
We agree?
Yeah, I think either.
I make a
Mary-
motion that we have Mary send a letter, just a letter of concern addressing.
And if you would say in it that a number of citizens have brought this forth to us, that'd be great.
And I will let both Judy and Joanne know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And,
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
And I'll sign it, just kind of.
All those in favor say aye.
Fine.
Okay.
And
There you go.
official communications.
I knew the chair was moving. No, I knew it was moving. I didn't want to fall.
Thank you.
It's because that one plank is, we really probably need
Gotta shore
Stewart,
up my
the
floor.
town, Stewart.
Is there a plaque there that's a
or
problem?
Wayne or somebody to just,
Wayne's-
well, it's,
I'll take a look.
I had my jackknife, I think I could drop it through there.
I know Lynn was
It's
convinced
bigger.
one time that it's getting
Well,
lighter.
almost lost Susan.
Sitting on it.
Oh, Department of Environmental Protection, these are always lovely.
That one's nice.
Oh, congratulations. It is my pleasure to inform you that the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection has awarded the town of Ashfield a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program municipal grant. The town of Ashfield will receive up to $500 for a targeted small-scale initiative. It's grant under the Green Communities Act, which directs a portion of the proceeds from the sale of waste energy certificates to recycling programs approved by Mass DEP. So we're going to get $500. The terms and conditions of your grant are outlined in the attached documents, which contains key dates and deadlines specific to your award. This information has also been provided to the municipal recycling contact copied below. Tom Poisson, so Tom, I got this.
I was just gonna say.
Following deadlines are required. Complete section 6, no later than February 1st, expend the funds as specified in the grant agreement. Which doesn't say. All funds must be spent and invoices received by Mass DEP by June 30th, end of the fiscal year. So if Tom jumps through a few hoops, we get $500.
That'll pay for the interest on the grader.
With a lot of the numbers that we go through, it doesn't seem like much, but all right. Oh, Office of the Attorney General. Oh, this was addressed but copied to me, us. This was to Kachina Urian. We understand that on or about July 5th, you filed a complaint with the Ashfield Select Board alleging a violation of the open meeting law. A public body required to notify our office. Blah, 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 blah. It's the same opening paragraph. Under the open meeting law, a complaint is right for review by our office when the complainant files a copy of the initial complaint with the Division of Open Government, provided that at least 30 days have passed since the complaint was filed with the public body. We sent you a letter on August 23rd stating that if we did not receive the original complaint from you by September 11th, we would presume the action taken by the public body was sufficient and we close the file. Our office currently has no record of a complaint filed by you in this manner, therefore we now consider the matter closed. So now it's all set. That's the results of that.
And then the first two are addressed to the select board in part, and the other two just were addressed to the office.
So this is, I believe there's 4, right?
That's
You
right.
just said that, there's 4. From Suzanne Corbett, and there's public records requests.
Was it addressed to the select board?
It seems to be addressed to the select board. The first two, and then the second two are to keeper of the records.
Well, I mean, the first one, it says it's in RE Public Records requesting select board meeting minutes and/or a copy of the record document that reports the deliberation motion and vote of the select board to notify the Attorney General's office and supervisor of records a pattern of abuse for requesting public documents. It's quite lengthy. It goes on. But what it's referring to is after we took the vote on, what was it, July 31st? That the following day or the following couple of days, that I signed the letters that we sent to, the Attorney General's office. So,
Is any action required by that letter, or just?
well, it's asking for the records, and I would say that none exist.
We didn't vote to send it to the AG with public records. We voted to do a draft.
To draft a letter to send with those that came in, but we did.
Asking for public records.
I did feel it was prudent to send that letter, and we sent that letter just reporting that we took that vote. So, if I remember right, 2 of us voted on that. And notified, since it had to do directly with the Attorney General's office with all the stuff that was going on, I felt it was prudent as the chairman to do that, so. But you're absolutely right, we didn't vote. We didn't vote that. So in the second one,
We haven't seen the draft either. We voted to have a draft, but we've never brought a draft to the table.
we haven't had the right one yet. Haven't had the right one.
Okay. That explains the reason.
The second one is really in the same, this is from Suzanne also. This is addressed to all of us. Did you make copies for all that?
I didn't. Sorry, I didn't. I wasn't sure what to do, so I didn't. I could do that. And
this one is supposedly violation of rights of privacy, electronic communication, computer usage, town website. And so it's addressed really to the select board, names each one of us, all town of Ashfield records, custodians, keepers, to include employees and elected and appointed officials, volunteers on committees or related activities. I am requesting the select board to advise all parties of the demand. top, it says Town of Ashfield Select Board Members, Board of Health, Technology Committee, Webmaster, Keeper of the Records. Okay, so,
So-
1, 2, 3, 4, 3 pages, 3 pages. So it goes on, you know, and pretty detailed, you know, it starts out, it's been recently pointed out to me that I was tagged, tracked, return receipt in an email communication as documented by Susan Clark as acting Secretary Records Keeper of the Board of Health. I did not authorize nor give my permission to track my electronic correspondence by any method, to include tabbing or tagging, monitoring or tracking. Any form of surveillance stops immediately. Additionally, I did not waive my privacy rights of personal information, nor did I authorize any collection of personal data by any person with access to my email address. And it goes, you know, just did not authorize third-party access. I have no idea where there's third-party access. There was, I mean, it just goes on. And what we need to do is make a copy so people can go through it, because I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Right, so should I make a copy for the other board members and also for all the boards mentioned there,
Yes.
or any individuals mentioned?
Yes. And I mean, this goes, you know, I mean, when you get towards the end, it says that my submission of a letter August 1st to the Attorney General's office demonstrates his continued intentional willful act disregarding truth. His letter advances I am engaged in criminal activity. He states there is evidence of my activity in concert with others. These actions can only be viewed as premeditated, a purposeful intent of harming me. Therefore, I am requesting, and it goes on, and it's very much like the first one I said, a copy of the sworn statement that affected the search, well, this one is good, copy of the sworn statement that affected the search warrant to invade my personal life. 2 copies of, talking about me, copies of his supporting evidence of my criminal activities, and 3 copies of the supporting evidence to prove probable cause of criminality that initiated the surveillance. So there's a lot in this for the number of pages, and there's a document request to go with that. But, you know, when I think I have it here. One too far away. I mean, here's the letter that was dated August 1st to Attorney Sklarczyk at the Attorney General's office. It says, I am writing to inform you of an unusual and difficult step taken by the Ashfield Select Board. At the July 31st, 2013 meeting, the Ashfield Select Board voted to meet the town's duty to respond with a form letter signed by the chair that says we are in receipt of your public document request dated whenever it is. Over the last 30 months, our records show that we have replied to your request and supplied you with documents on the same and similar topics however many times. At this point, the Select Board has directed the Town Hall staff to file your request and to carry on the business of the other 1,800 people of town, which not exactly very, very closely is the motion that was made. Then the letter goes on. For over 2 years, the town has struggled to meet an onslaught of open meeting law violation complaint filings coupled with unrelenting public records requests generated by very few individuals working in concert. The board has determined that the burden these demands have created have impeded the town's ability to meet its many other legal responsibilities. The town was therefore left with no recourse other than to take this action. By approving this motion, the board hopes to provide relief from what we believe can clearly be established as a coordinated assault on the town's ability to function. The board recognizes and supports the public good intended by the Public Records Act and will continue to respect lawful requests made thereunder. However, the board believes the act has been abused rather than properly used, and in fact takes this action in support, not in defiance of the act. We will provide you with all information pertaining to the pattern of abusive process that has placed an unsupportable burden of compliance on the town of Ashfield. So I think when you read this, when Mary gets copies made and sends it, that you really have to take it with what was actually written, that it doesn't talk about criminal, it doesn't name any names in here, it doesn't do any of that. So,
Do you think there was something else? It sounds like her letter references wiretapping and all sorts of stuff.
it references a whole lot of stuff with issues with stuff being on the internet, I mean, and email communications and that sort of thing. And in it, at the end, it says, you know, don't use my email, don't call my home telephone, don't use my Ashfield post office box.
Well, yeah, should we send a copy of that to town council and ask?
I have no idea. You two need to take a look at it and read it and come up with something. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think I'm not sure what to do with it. My position is not to do a lot, except as far as the requests, if they can be taken care of, that's fine. I mean, she wants, if anybody wants minutes of what we deliberated on me sending that letter, it doesn't exist. I mean, that's pretty easy to address. I don't know, if somebody has an idea what to do, I'd be glad to listen to it, but I mean, this is pretty all-encompassing. And so you need to get Paulette and Ron copies of that.
I'll scan those in and send them out to you.
Just to follow up, but the one you're talking about, the letter that you had signed and sent that didn't involve the board, that's not a good practice. That's the kind of thing that gets us in a meeting law violation. I'm not saying the letter was bad, I'm just saying it should have come before here, and whether 1, 2, 3 agreed, whatever, it should have come before the board, not an independent action by the chair.
Okay, well, so where is the line on that? Because the town, I mean, I could have very easily just called Mary and said, I really think we ought to send a letter. But since I proposed it and voted for it, I felt that it was probably my responsibility to pen it.
We didn't vote on
And
it, though.
we did vote. We did vote on
I
that
distinctly
motion that I'm
remember.
talking about.
We voted to do a draft. We never voted that we were going to send communication, because you were very precise about your comments that.
Oh, no, I agree 100%, but as far as us communicating that to an office that we routinely communicated those problems to, seemed to be prudent, especially when the action that we took could have been found questionable by that same office.
Not debating that. I'm just saying it should have come to the whole board first.
I just don't know where the line is, and I can agree, I just don't know where the line is, because every week there's a tremendous number of communications that none of us vote on that go to any number of state agencies.
Aren't we bringing most everything that involves us to this board?
I mean, routine things, you know, things that have to do with the assessors, stuff that has to go to the state, surveys that come in. Aren't there a number of things that the town clerk and everybody else, that town officials, that they fill out? There's a lot of communication that goes on.
Well, the town's clerk is signing her documents, that's not what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the board. Ron was there, back in June of 2012, town council was here, just explaining that the chair doesn't have any additional rights to do things just by being chair, and that documents and things like that needed to come. She worded it differently, Ron maybe remembers, together at the board, that's all. So I was concerned about that one as you read it, because it does have some language in it that, depending who you are, is not exactly generic and tame. So it's got accusations in it, so it might have been good if it came to the whole board before.
Well, look, I can cut the conversation short. I don't know that this letter does anything but provide the position that the board found itself in. And I think it explains that very clearly to the Attorney General's office. But if I'm being chastised for doing something that maybe should have come to the board, or should have definitely come to the board for a vote, that's fine. But I'm not going to apologize for sending that letter, because I felt it was prudent to do so and let them know immediately on action that we took that they would want to be informed about.
My recollection of the situation is that the board was directed to write a letter and to act a certain way, or to respond a certain way to the situation that was before us. And so I left that meeting feeling like we did what the town wanted us to do. I didn't feel the need that we had to meet. I haven't seen that letter until you just read it.
Well,
This letter.
we added it to the minutes.
Okay, but I
Back
haven't
a month ago.
Yeah, but I haven't seen it. Now I have. And I don't think it's terribly out of line. I think it was, it captures what was in that meeting at that time. I really think it's fine. I don't have any comment on what Suzanne's writing, because I thought this stuff pretty much had disappeared, but apparently it's going on in the background still, and I need to read it. And I don't know how I want to respond to it.
No, and there's a lot there to read.
And some of it is just for the office to respond to.
I mean, short of, if this was a regular select board meeting and it wasn't what happened with the environment at that time, that was a different situation. That was different. I don't really have the time to go back and listen to it and word on it, but I feel like you acted upon the wishes of the town and the board. But I can't tell you exactly what happened.
I mean, it may very well be that I should have brought that, to the board before we did it, but I felt that it was important that we, and all that does is inform the Attorney General of what we did on stuff that we had routinely been sending, we have to send to the Attorney General. Or we wait for determinations from them. So I'll apologize for not bringing it to the board, but I really do feel it was prudent, and I won't apologize for doing it, but just maybe not bringing it to the board. So. And then there's two more from Suzanne. November 6th and November 9th, really public document requests on really the same things again. So you're preparing responses for that. So. I'm gonna hand this back and we can make copies and get these all to Paulette and Ron, so they have a,
Yeah, because
and then
Don't-
the request. You know, if there's documents, document request, if there's a document that can be sent, we'll send it. But if there's no document, we can't make one up. What else do you have?
And then you know the Thursday, December 12th is the, just a reminder, of Franklin County workshops on
aging population.
What?
Aging population.
Aging population, exactly. And did you all get the December 5th Hampshire County Select Board Association? Sometimes email comes in, I can't really see.
Yeah, I got that one, but I missed this one on the 12th, right in Greenfield.
I'll give that to Tom.
That's
And then,
just proof we're
Every
aging.
day, every day. Some of us get a couple days in one. Yeah, that was the one day that week I didn't have something scheduled.
and then in your folders, you have a couple of pieces of mail that make copies of local historic commission members. Came in addressed to the select board, so. And the Hampshire County Select Boards Association, December 5th, so everybody have that to apply
That's
to.
this email.
Yep.
And they're going to be discussing councils
Oh, yes.
of aging and senior centers.
Yeah, it's a theme.
Maybe a theme for quite some time.
Anything else in your folder?
Hampshire County. No.
Yesterday, Alan Rice approached me at the store and he said, do I need to come in and ask for permission to go up into the steeple? He's working on a historical society project. It's a then and now.
Oh, yes, yes.
So he wanted a picture from the steeple that they have, and he didn't tell me what year, of the church across the street.
Mhm.
And I told him that I didn't feel that he needed to come to the select board, that if he spoke to Stuart or Wayne and got up there, that would be
I think
fine.
it needs to
And
be
he's
a
been up there
committee.
before.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's been up there before. He says, I know all about it. I took some great pictures from up there. But he said, I didn't, that's the picture I need to finish the calendar, the Historical Society calendar.
Mhm.
And I said, just don't go up there by yourself, just make sure somebody's with you. Because I'm not going with you.
And I'm sorry, there was one other thing, but this was in the folder for the meeting for the 4th, and it's notification from DOT.
Oh, state aid. Chapter 9 to payment voucher, $250,264.05 for stone seal. Dear board members, please be advised the payment voucher for the above amount has been submitted to our state aid section in the Boston office on October 23rd. We have attached the fiscal year 14 balance and expenditure sheet for your review. Please note that for future projects, TAP code is required at a rate of 0.5 of a gallon per square yard over an existing surface. Without this product, the roadway may be laminated. I hope Tom knows what he's talking about. He got a copy of the letter.
And
That was good.
as did the accountant.
So that's a good reimbursement. How long do you happen to know how long that had been in? That voucher to be reimbursed?
I think it must be 2 or 3 months at least, but that would be my.
Because I remember Tom coming in the summer saying he had a big one going on, so.
And how much? Did we get that?
250.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah, 250, 264.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
That's good.
the Only other thing that I've got cooking is I'm trying to set up an appointment with, before our selectmen's meeting so we can talk about it with some facts and numbers. I'm not exactly sure when it's gonna happen, but I wanna get together with Laura
I have 2 dates for you.
and Tom Poisson. And if I can draw Ted Murray into it, I will, just so we don't have to post a meeting, but we can have a discussion about it, to talk about the FEMA and Irene money, how much we're expecting to get reimbursed, how much we have been reimbursed, so we have a good handle on that, because in a month, we've got a note to pay.
90,000 or something.
And we've got to figure out how much of that note we can pay and how revenue, so I was going to set a half a day aside in the next week or so we can, seems like that note date is December, it's before Christmas, isn't it?
So are you gonna come
Matter
back
of
to
fact,
us?
the meeting, the date is the 18th. Because I figured if we did it by the 16th,
For the meeting date, right.
our meeting's on the 16th, we could give direction once we talk about that on the 18th, so I was going to come in.
Last meeting, you were going to talk with Nancy Hoff about a truck, the sewer.
Well, actually, I was going to talk to her about trying to get how to get caught up with vacation time and so forth for the superintendent.
Operator.
She ended up going on to see her mother,
Oh, okay.
so we missed that. But I was going to incorporate the truck into that. But in the meantime, what I did is I went and saw Tom. I told Tom to go down and get a hold of Betty and assure Betty that anytime she needed a truck, that they would bring the red town truck for her to use. And last Sunday, I saw that Betty and her helper were in the red truck because they had a pump to replace down at the girls' head.
The both pumps,
So I
one cropped out, and then they were only going on one pump, and then that one, some kind of paper, or some kind of other, not toilet paper, other paper, like craft paper or something like that.
So I'm almost of the, unless Tom needs the red truck, he just leaves it down there all the time.
Which the idea was to get through till February.
Get through until we have a better idea.
The special town meeting in February instead of them needing to have a meeting in December. That's what that was for, wasn't it?
Right, the idea was to
Get by. Okay.
not call it an emergency just because. I mean, there was a way around it, and Tom's fine with it.
Good.
And just a reminder, before you adjourn, when we're done, we'll go in and sign the tax certification on the gateway.
So how do we do that?
See, it's a couple end pages on the back. I
Okay.
don't have the end
I figured
page.
you'd tell us.
Yeah, I'll bring it up and each of you will sign in and put it.
But I mean, we can't all go in there together, right?
Oh, you can, yeah, we've done that every year, you're not gonna talk about anything.
We'll adjourn and we won't talk about anything.
Fine.
Anything else? It's 10:58.
Let's get out of here.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
A second, all right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.